My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome yet again to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast from Consequence of Sound. My name is Randall Danse Macabre Colburn.
Whoa.
And we are here to discuss the book that I decided to use as my middle name today. And it's I chose it as my middle name because it's a different kind of book, because I'm a different kind of guy. You know, I'm not like the rest of the horror novels out there. I'm a little bit introspective. I'm a little bit analytical, and it's just how I like to conduct myself. So if you're not familiar, Danse Macabre is a book that Stephen King wrote as sort of his musings on the horror genre in totality. Film, radio, TV, books. What does the master of horror think about horror? And I think that is an interesting book that I think a lot of King fans probably, I think casual King fans at least is one that they overlooked. So why don't we all go around and introduce ourselves and tell us a little bit about how you first read Danse Macabre and how it, how you first came about it. Was it an early one for you, or did it come around a little bit late? So to my left, who are you and how did you first read Danse Macabre?
I'm McKenzie Bang Gerber, and
Bang?
yeah, like Joe Bang. So I came across Danse Macabre very recently. Again, I've not read any Stephen King books really at all, and I was excited to jump into this, especially after reading Roadwork. Because I was like, well, why did you write that? What is your, why do you write what you write? No, but I was excited to read something that wasn't an actual novel, and to see, especially when he wrote this. Because how old was he?
33.
Yeah.
33. Now, I'm 34. I'm not trying to date myself, which I just did, but I just, it's amazing. Reading this, I'm just like, are you kidding me? The amount of stuff this guy has read, seen, and heard at the age of 33 is like shames me, And I've seen a lot of movies, but I've got to get on some of these books, and it's great that he's got a list here in the back.
And what's the edition?
I read the Gallery Books edition, which has a great cover. If you've ever seen it, it's got this like a student's desk with Danse Macabre etched into it in blood.
Classes in session.
Just like a red pen.
Yeah, it's really. He would have had to write it upside down, right? Because
I think
he's sitting at the desk.
Well, because he's the teacher and he wrote it on the desk.
Good morning, students. I am your professor, Stephen King.
Yeah, this also looks like these are in like an empty warehouse. So like where was he teaching? It's kind of scary. But yeah, that was my first introduction to it. It's been very recent, and I was really interested in reading.
Cool. And who's sitting across from Mac?
This is Melanie Ruth Kassel.
Yes.
Ruth is a very serious middle name. I don't like to joke about it.
very, very religious.
Yeah. I bought Danse Macabre as a Stephen King fan who hadn't heard of it a couple years ago, and I felt like it was a great time to buy that book. I had just started to take myself as a writer of dark stories seriously, and I said, oh my God, he published a book on what he thinks of horror and why he writes horror, so I should definitely read this. And I remember thinking like, oh yeah, as I got into it, I was really getting into what his musings on the genre and where he thinks our urge to consume this kind of stuff comes from. Now I think I read it with more of a critical eye, so it was a good thing to read it again.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, out of the fog of my own power-hungry beginnings.
And what edition do you have?
Oh,
It's like 83 version.
It's 80.
Is the first one, the one that came out a little bit. Yeah, the 83.
I have the same. It's the Berkeley Book edition.
I think that might be like the first paperback edition.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah.
It's got his face looming out of the darkness. His face is purple.
Yeah, it's like a weird purple
and
pinkish
his eyes
color.
are red.
And so did this inform your... would you say that it informed your approach to horror in any way? Like as somebody who writes horror and dark stories?
not consciously. I'll have to think
Sure.
about that.
Yeah.
I think it just kind of gave me this little nice bit of oomph.
Yeah?
when
No, I
was
hear
starting
you.
out. And I think I can relate to a lot of experiences in here. Like my first horror movie was also Creature from the Black Lagoon. So I was very happy to read those nostalgic passages.
Interesting. And then who is sitting next to you?
Hi, I'm Justin Danse Macabre Gerber, because I'm also very introspective, and I have a very analytical mind. To steal a phrase from our fellow loser over here, I also had the same edition that my brother had, with the one with the mysterious row of chairs in a abandoned warehouse where there are broken dressers in the background or whatever.
I think it's a ghost classroom. There's no one sitting at these chairs.
I like Bag of Bones.
How does Bag of Bones fit in?
Ghosts. Okay. Spoiler alert. It's funny, I'm looking at Mel and Randall's old 83 edition, and I just realized that there's a little devil's tail coming out from the K in Stephen King. Like, ooh, who is this? But
It's a devilishly dark tale.
Once again, like I said a couple weeks ago, Roadwork was the first book that we covered that I had not read yet until the last episode. And I had not read Danse Macabre until a week ago. And I was actually familiar with the book, though. I've been familiar with it for about 30 years, because I do remember this paperback distinctly. And I read the text Danse Macabre. Obviously, as a child, I probably pronounced it like, Danse Macabre or whatever. But I thought it was just some weird ancient tale, because I didn't know that Stephen King looked like this. I thought it was some Roman tale with this big beard, and I don't know what the hell I thought it was at the time.
No, that's just Cocaine King.
That's right. Those were actually his eyes at the time. Bloodshot. He's doing fine now. We can make fun of it. But I was... Just brief impressions right off the bat, I was fascinated by it. It was a very quick read. It's a very long read. It's about 400 pages with small font. But as somebody who has loved horror for as long as I can remember, it was just, I'll say, intoxicating. Not sound like I'm speaking with too much hyperbole. But it was just a breezy read. I would just pick it up and read 50 pages and not know when I was done.
You feel validated.
Yeah, I do.
And
the great thing about the book also is he doesn't just give a history of horror. I mean, he gives a defense of it a lot of the time too, which I really was.
Yeah, he very much I think we always get annoyed by people who kind of have that attitude about like, oh, I can't believe that you can watch that stuff, and then he kind of does this brilliant defense of it where he talks about the idea of suspending disbelief and the idea of it being a heavy thing and not a light thing. Like, it's actually, to suspend one's disbelief is a hard thing to do, and how that he's like, oh, I always feel sympathy for people who can't do that because they can't carry the weight of fantasy. And I was like, yeah, boy, like
I've got a lot of pull quotes about from those defenses there.
So since you went with Justin Danse Macabre Gerber, I'm going to change my name to Randall Christine Colburn, because baby, I've got an engine just revving to go right now. And so I actually, I've told this story a couple times, but the funny thing was I had forgotten this aspect of it. I got into King because my grandma, I used to sit in her basement and flip through what I thought were the 3 Stephen King books she had. She had Christine, The Shining, and The Dead Zone. And I would flip through them all. And then she gave those to me because she knew that I was always messing around with them. And but now I remember that she actually also owned Danse Macabre and gave that to me as well. But I was never interested in it because from flipping through it, I kind of learned that it was a book of, essentially a book of essays about horror. And when I was that young, I just didn't care, And also, when I was that young, I didn't like horror watching it. I liked reading it. I didn't like gore. It really upset me. But the thing was, I loved to hear about it. And my friends would watch scary movies, and I would always make them tell me about it. But it was something that I personally couldn't engage with. So I didn't really care about, and that changed when I got into high school and I got into horror movies. But it was, and so I finally read Danse Macabre. It wasn't for a long time. It sat on my bookshelf gathering dust for a while. It was one of the last Stephen King books I read on my initial read through of all of his work, probably in the early to mid 90s. And I remember, and I think I was telling the story about how I read Firestarter when I was like tanning out on my back deck, and it's like this one I also read around that same time because Firestarter and Danse Macabre were 2 of the last Stephen King books I ever read. And so it was that period of time where I was always out tanning and I was reading Danse Macabre. And so, but I remember at the time, even then, I found myself skipping a lot because I'd be like, radio, I don't want to read about old 50s horror radio. That doesn't interest me. So, but I remember there's a lot of images images, though, that stuck with me from this book, and especially the way he would talk about horror movies that were hard to get your hands on. The way he discusses Todd Browning's Freaks in this makes it feel like sort of a mythic cult horror movie. Because when he wrote this book, that was a hard movie to find. Like, to watch it again was almost impossible. And I mean, 81, was that pre-VHS tape?
He mentions video.
Oh, okay.
I feel like it had just come up around that time.
Yeah. And I mean, but then Todd Browning's Freaks was not released in that way. And so it wasn't until, like, the way he describes that in an alternate version of Freaks, like they castrated the strongman, like you actually saw it or something. Like, that to me was such a striking, visceral image that movie reigned in my mind for, and the fact that he used actual circus attraction, freaks in it. And there's a photo of them. And I used to kind of stare at that photo a lot because I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never been to, seen a freak show or anything. So that image and that description of the movie stayed with me until college. And I remember I went to college and my friend, it had just been released on DVD, Freaks did, and a friend of mine owned it. And we all watched it one night. And it was like a real, like, scary moment for me. And I love that movie. But of course, obviously, it's not nearly as scary as, and that's always the case. Like, if you build up and mythologize a movie in your mind for years, it's never going to be as scary. Like, funny story, my niece was so excited. She had read the Hunger Games books, but her mom wouldn't let her watch the movies. And then sort of as a present, she let her watch the first movie on DVD. And we were all kind of in the room as she was watching it, like doing our own things. And we were like so excited. We're like, this is such an exciting moment for her because it's like, when I got to see, I don't know, the first Ninja Turtles movie when I was a kid. It's like, it's like an exciting thing to see the thing that you have read about or played the toys with or whatever come to life on screen. And then when it was over, she was like, it was okay. And we were like, what? Like, but it was like she had built it up.
The other three, you better like it.
She had just built it up in her mind so much that it was never it. And so I remember I felt that way about Freaks at first. But then I rewatched it again, and I can really appreciate what a astounding work it is. But, I never would have engaged with it if it weren't for this book. So I think that kind of serves as a nice introduction to, I think, because I think that just speaks to how this book resonated for me as I got older, because I didn't know anything about horror films. I knew about books to a degree, but I mainly just read Stephen King and Dean Koontz and R.L. Stein and Christopher Pike and guys like that.
The true masters of horror.
Yeah, I read some Richard Matheson when I was really young, mainly because of this book. I remember I got a copy of Stir of Echoes because the movie was going to come out, and he doesn't talk about Stir of Echoes, but he talks about Richard Matheson a lot. So I remember being at the Walden Books and being like, well, he's one of King's favorite authors. So I picked up that book and I really liked it. But, I'd never really engaged with most of the things that he discusses here. When I read this, I hadn't seen The Shining. I hadn't seen The Thing. I hadn't seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers yet. So I approached all those movies with King's critiques in mind, which was really neat. So how would you say that this book, and that was me when I was really young, so it's very different. As people who read these books relatively recently, within the last several years, how did it sort of resonate as a whole to you? Who wants to start? Justin?
I can jump on it. It's funny because I kind of had the opposite read from you, Randall, because I felt like I have seen most of these horror movies, and I grew up watching a lot of horror movies. But as we discussed in the past, I've read hundreds upon hundreds of novels that spread over centuries. But I do have a black hole in my horror fiction reading. So it was fascinating to read about. I feel like he points out 10 novels specifically in the second to last chapter. And I don't think I had read but maybe one of them. And even though they're considered classics. So what was your initial question, Randall? I forgot.
Well, I think
just like, what was the
total resonance?
Yeah, I think it's just like what I think it's more so just like, what are you taking with you out of this read?
Oh, well, there you go. I've already started. I'm reading Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man Is Hard to Find.
Yeah,
short story collection. I'm already halfway through it, and I'm already blown away by it. So I'm just really excited right now. Once again, I always plug Overdrive, my Chicago Public Library Kindle app.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just lined up, Rosemary's Baby, Haunting of Hill House, and a few other books that I'm just going to be reading in between our King coverage.
Nice.
So I've got my next, 35 years of my life like that at this point. But that was my big takeaway, was just getting excited about the possibilities of horror literature, because I feel like I'm just so determined to watch every horror movie that comes out. I forget about all the genuine classic horror that's there to be read as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how about you, Mel?
Similarly, I think I'm going to pursue a lot more horror media in the days to come. I remember when I was in college, just getting into Lovecraft, I would take his short stories and I would circle all the words I didn't know and then look them up later. This felt kind of like that. Like I was taking notes to see, what I hadn't seen. And again, coming to it for a second time, I think I was a little half-assed the first time when I read it, and I was only looking for certain things, and I wasn't looking to increase my education as much. And this time I would like to delve more into it. But I'm glad that I had seen a lot of the movies in here, because I do think that if I had come to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, either version, with his thoughts in mind, it would have biased me in some way. And I think it helped me to take him off a pedestal a little bit.
Yeah.
to hear his thoughts and say, well, that's not what I got out of it. And that's a good thing. Like, I wasn't disappointed. It was more just like, we can all get different things out of different things. Life lessons. And I gotta say, I mean, just overall, I felt that, like, the form of the book that he takes is almost like 50-50. At the end is like this deep dive into these 10 novels, where if you haven't read them, you're kind of like, well, you've spoiled it for me. And even if I had read it, a lot of this is plots. Like, I don't know. I just felt like that was a bit much. I also felt, I love how he makes fun of academic approaches to things, while skirting this line of not getting too academic himself, but wanting to critique things with a close reading. So as an exercise, I just loved reading it as my reading of an exercise that Stephen King decided to do, and like how successful he was at distancing himself and writing like a cool academic, not one of those like MA professors who's just going to dissect it and put it on a shelf. And
that he goes off on in the several times.
I want to put a pin in that, because that, I think, is the next topic I want to explore, is the idea of how he structured the book, and how he does skirt that line between academic analysis, personal memoir, and sort of fanboying in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, Mac, what did you take overall from this?
I was just kind of, it was really nice, because I feel like I've been kind of in a creative stump lately, and reading this really, kickstarted my imagination again, in terms of like diving into these books or these movies I haven't seen, especially like the radio genre stuff. I really want to try to find some of that stuff, because that's got to be available somewhere now,
It's probably as easily accessible as something like YouTube.
Yeah, but there was time, and like I was kind of like Mel, where I was making notes of, I was like, oh, he's mentioned this book or this movie like 5 times, like Repulsion, or it was H.P. Lovecraft, The Color Out of Space, and which I just bought. So I'm like, I gotta look into all this stuff, and but I'm just really excited to kind of have like now this like plethora of things that have been recommended by King, which is funny, because I think we give King a lot of shit all the time for his recommendations. Not he likes everything, but that's usually just his own adaptations and things. So I'm very excited to see like my take, like what Mel was saying, like her take on it was different from his, but that's okay, because we're all different people, and I'm interested to see like if I see what he saw in some of these books.
I think that's sort of what was to be expected, I think, but also because, just based on the way he writes in general. But I think what's clear from our takeaways from this is that King knows how to excite people about horror. He has such a great way of talking about it. And I think that's probably why this book came to be. I mean, basically, was it his editor who basically like said, why don't you do this? Because I think they just wanted another release from him because they knew it would make a lot of money, because he was, hot stuff at this time. Because he was finishing up Firestarter as he was writing this, right? Mm-hmm. Like Firestarter was getting ready to be released as he was working on this. So he was a hot, no pun intended, there was a fire under King at this time. And I mean, so I think that they probably saw, they were like, oh, let's just have King write about horror, and it could just be, he can knock it out really quickly, and it'll be a good, it'll be a good profit maker. But I think it ended up being an exercise that he took very seriously, because, man, like, you think about it now, like, I write a horror essay every month for Consequence of Sound, and I am all over the internet,
that was my biggest thing.
Yeah, like doing research, pulling things, and reminding myself of the plots of books that I read when I was a kid or movies I saw when I was a kid. And man, like, he didn't have that. Like, he had to go through his old collections and draw upon memory and probably reread and rewatch a lot of this stuff.
Although I do love when it's clear that he did not consciously made that decision. Where he's like, I might be wrong, but I think this happened.
Yeah.
Anyway,
there's even a preface where he's like, I'm sure people will be writing in to correct me on all my mistakes.
The version that Mel and I have, he talks about in the foreword about how this version has some corrections because people gave him a lot of shit on the first edition.
Anybody gets it. I mean, that's the incredible thing to me is the amount of research that goes into this book. And again, there's no internet,
right?
And it's not like the man with X-ray eyes are going to be in your local encyclopedia or anything like that.
Exactly.
So I just was real,
and especially when you can't stream shit either. You can't go watch a clip on YouTube. Like, he had to go either get these VHS tapes or
thinking like you said, Freaks. There was no way to watch Freaks.
I know,
and I don't think there would be a way to watch Freaks for another 15 years actually before they found another copy.
And I think that's sort of, and I think if there's another thing too, I think the time period in which this was written is so exciting, and we'll probably touch on that more later because I really want to talk about the structure. But I'll just say that I really love the way that the time period informs this, because so many authors, filmmakers, people that he touches on went on to do so much more after this. But from what we hear about, we're only hearing this very limited experience that he's had with people like, say, Wes Craven, who had made The Last House on the Left and maybe a couple other small
Hills
things.
Have Eyes at that point.
Hills Have Eyes. And so he really did not like, Last House on the Left, and he really kind of is like poo-poos Wes Craven, which is really interesting because the guy really went on to change horror in so many ways. But yeah, let's talk about the structure a little bit. Clearly, I think this book was written fairly quickly in sort of a fervor, and the idea was pitched to him without any strong structure. It was just kind of like, hey, Steve, why don't you write about horror and your thoughts on it and why it is what it is? So the thing is, like Firestarter, I'd say, which is one of our things that the book felt a little unfocused in terms of structure. I think Danse Macabre has a similar kind of feel to it. So, Justin, like, how would you describe the way the book kind of moves from topic to topic?
I think I would actually echo what Mel said earlier about how, they really do, he breaks it down by the genre. So, he starts off with his early impressions of film. He talks about the hook in another chapter. He talks about another subgenre, and all of a sudden near the end, it's like deep dissection on 10 great novels.
Yeah.
And which I enjoy, and I'm not saying I enjoy that, but that's how the structure really broke down for me. I like the flow of the book, I guess, if that's the overall thing. Like I said, I was able to just blow by it.
Yeah.
I think that's just, I don't know. I just really enjoyed the way it was formatted. For me, the structure worked well. The breaking it down into 10 chapters was the best way to go about it. Some longer than others, but I don't know.
What do you guys think? Any other thoughts?
He writes in a way that's very intimate, which is everyone who's read him knows this. So when you do get a long nonfiction piece, you are able to, at his own urging, forgive him for a lot of the scattered areas. And it really does feel like this collaboration as you're reading. I feel like you feel very close to him, and he's telling you personal stories. And even when the writing is, he always brings something up and is like, we'll get back to that in a second. I know, I didn't finish my point. I know. We're going to get back to it. And it's endearing. To me, it's endearing. To other people, it might feel a little hokey.
Exactly. And I think that's sort of maybe what separates it from being an academic analysis is that he's not afraid to insert himself into the narrative here, because I think for him, horror is a very personal thing. But he kind of says early on, he's like, this isn't a memoir, and he's like, I'm not going to talk about myself that much. But then he spends like forever talking about that screening where they announced the Russians launched the
whenever
satellite.
he talks about himself, he always apologizes.
Yeah.
Like, well, here we go in a little bit of an autobiographical bent here.
It's an apology, but it's always like, I'm going to apologize, but I'm going to go ahead and do this anyway.
That's right.
And I'm going to pull it off.
Wink, wink. Here's some more about me.
So, you go, Mac.
No, it's just funny because, like, I feel like he really is, like, we're really one of him, like, he even says at one point, he says something about, like, He's like, oh dear God, we're off on another tangent. And I feel like we go off on a lot of tangents here at the Losers Club.
No.
So,
Focus sharp.
but we don't apologize for it. No. It is very like stream of consciousness. Like I feel like he was just writing, and then he was like, oh yeah, and I guess this leads to this, and we'll talk about this now. And so it was very easy to read the first section of the book, and I really liked how it just kind of kept evolving. And I didn't mind the tangents that he would go off on, because I really was enjoying everything that he was bringing up. But then of course the section at the end,
which I love that chapter.
Is very interesting for the novels that I've read or the things I've seen. I really enjoyed that, but for some of them, like Mel was saying, I was like, well, I don't think I need to see this now, or like I don't know if I can see it without seeing it this way now. But
I wonder if because he hears from every single author of the novels in those chapters. Like, do you think he procured that promise from them before doing it? Like, maybe he had a longer list, and that was part of the reason why he.
Well, he's clearly buddies with Peter Straub. So I think that it was probably like. He probably was like, hey, do you want to talk to me for my book? And then maybe his editor or somebody was just like, hey, can you talk to the rest of these guys if they're still alive? Yeah. Like, and the thing is, he was a big enough name at the time that I don't think it was a problem.
Like, who's Ray Bradbury?
Bradbury. So, I think that's really interesting. And I think that does point to sort of, because like Justin, you said you wrote down some examples of times when King gets really combative or antagonistic against people who approach horror criticism from, say, a collegial perspective, or even what was the other thing that he was kind of, critics. Like he really goes in on critics here too. Like the way he talks about film critics is kind of crazy, because like Pauline Kael is kind of considered, film critic royalty in a lot of ways, and he is kind of very dismissive of her, at least when it comes to the way that they write about horror. And there was only one critic, I can't remember the name of him, but that he said actually took horror movies seriously.
Judith something.
Yeah, I can't remember. But like the way, like he talked about Brian De Palma's The Fury, and how Pauline Kael's review of it began like, oh, this is the art of junk, or like film junk or something like that. And then he goes, are you kidding? Like, all horror is that, And so he's like, quit trying to like overly apply, like act like this movie, because it's directed by Brian De Palma, is like better than other horror movies.
I do have a little quote here about critics specifically that I like to read here. King writes, this is pretty brutal. As somebody, I know a couple of us here have been critics for years, he writes, no one is so humorless as a big-time film critic, or so apt to read deep meanings into simple doings. It is as if these circles feel it necessary to prove and reprove their own literacy. They are like teenage boys who feel obliged to demonstrate and redemonstrate they're macho, perhaps most of all to themselves.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
And he has another moment when he talks about people who try to distinguish what separates sci-fi and fantasy. And he compares like, oh, these are the conversations you'll only hear among drunks or graduate students.
Or people at cons.
Yes. And the funny thing is, like, I wonder how he copes with that now, because that's permeated the culture. Like genre has now permeated the culture, whereas when he wrote this book, it hadn't at all.
I think in many ways genre depends on these cons.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because so much of it, especially when he's talking about like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and how like everyone's like, oh, there's this huge stuff, this is the Reds and the commies and all this stuff, and he writes that Don Siegel like was just having fun, and that just kind of came out. And
Jack Finney, I think, was more. The writer thought it was more actually kind of about beware of the commies. But people took it as more of a against the anti-communist movement, but it wasn't necessarily that. That's what I love about these things. It's all up to interpretation. It's all up to the reader, really, what they want to get from it.
I do love how every author he talks to, I don't think there's any exception. They're all just like, I wasn't. It's not supposed to be this grand allegory. I wanted to tell a horror story.
Sometimes it's just a scary story.
But I personally kind of connected with that, because I feel like I always set out. I don't have like an agenda. I wrote this really ridiculous absurdist play like a while back, and it's one of the kind of things where when you're done and someone comes up like, oh, I loved what you were saying about the war. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, no, I didn't. Like, I had no agenda, And it's just like, it's weird how people take it and they see what they want to see, and they, project what they want to on it. And it's like very apparent. And there's a lot of these, were taken a certain way, or at the time in which they were written. And again, you ask the author, and they're like, "No, I didn't mean that."
Yeah. And I think the way that King sort of really skirts the sense that he is also being overly academic in his analysis of these things is that he states first and foremost the same philosophies that he states as a writer, which is that story is paramount to everything else. And to delve too deep into themes and symbols without, while sacrificing the story as a means of doing so is, to him, I think, what really bothers him. He wants people to look at the story and the intent first and foremost. And he says he even values that above characterization, which is really interesting. So, so on that note, he has a lot of different approaches, theories, philosophies about horror that he outlines throughout these pages, because he does do deep dives into various books and movies and things of that nature, and he talks about TV horror and radio horror, but he spends a good amount of the early part of the movie discussing sort of his personal philosophies about horror. And kind of one of the ones that he begins with, Justin, if you want to take the lead here, this idea of gross out versus the creeps, and sort of the tension that exists between these kinds of horror.
I think there are certain movies that kind of are a combination of both, but he breaks down the gross out horror, which is there just to kind of revolt you, it just depends on the amount of blood and the amount of gore that's shown, and stabbings and this physical act that's being performed in front of you. And then there's the creeps, and he uses a great example of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. There's no gore in Invasion of the Body Snatchers at all. There's no blood. It's the uncertainty that kind of permeates in that film.
Yeah.
And he goes into great detail about both of those. And I just started thinking about, even nowadays, a lot of these themes I would kind of relate to films that have come out in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
I think we'll talk about that later on.
We will,
yeah. Of that.
And then he breaks it down even further. There's those two sort of grand, overlying sort of approaches to horror, but then there's some stuff that doesn't really, a lot of this stuff, of course, encompasses, many layers, but then he breaks things down by terror versus horror versus revulsion. And that, to me, I think, is where I think a lot of us it's a good access point, because I think we all approach horror. There's so many different ways to look at it, but those three tiers really serve as a good means into almost any horror movie.
Yeah. And I think, again, the gross out and the creeps kind of fall into those three categories too. I mean, the terror he describes as what the mind sees, what might have been there, and he uses the short story of The Hook and The Monkey's Paw as good examples of that. And then horror he defines as something that's not entirely of the mind, that invites a physical reaction by showing us something that is physically wrong. And he uses the great old Tales from the Crypt comics. This is way before the TV series was out. These are the old nasty comics that were out. And then revulsion, again, that's the gross out. The alien chest burster. And he goes into his original death about Jimmy Cody and Salem's Lot, which I found pretty fascinating with the rats.
Do you guys remember that? There's a fun... he tells a little story about how Jimmy Cody, who I believe in the book falls on a bed of knives. Yeah. And that's how he dies, which is gross. But he has another... In the previous version, Straker summoned a bunch of rats to consume him, and he tries to yell to Mark, and one climbs in his mouth. And it's so funny because he basically says that he's glad he didn't do that, and that his editor told him it was a bit too much. But I don't know. We've seen so much shit. The boundaries have been pushed so far by this point that it's that sounds almost tame.
Yeah, exactly.
I do love how readers were writing him okay, you clearly intended to do something with these rats, and nothing happened.
Yeah,
so
because they all disappear from the junkyard, right?
I think we all mentioned that when we did the episode. I think we were like, what happened to the rats?
That's so funny, but it is funny to think about it back in the day. If people were saying that to him, that were they writing him letters? Because it's not like you can just fire off an email. Yeah, I know.
Cursive.
Chekhov's rats.
So
Chekhov's rats.
So let's talk about terror a little bit, because I think this is a really neat. I like the way he breaks this kind of stuff down, and the way he describes terror is as a pervasive sense of disestablishment, that things are in the unmaking. I think that is a really, really awesome description of that. And he mentions right after that description the idea of Lee Harvey Oswald, and the idea that this one man has the ability to change the world so much by assassinating John F. Kennedy, and which was obviously a big setup. And he had mentioned that 11/22/63 was a book that had been germinating in his mind for decades. And so I think that maybe it was around this time that he may have even been thinking about it, because he says that is sort of a good example. And I think that is a really good example of the book 11/22/63. Like, that's not a book that's filled with gross out or horror necessarily. Like, there's awful people in it and everything, but there's no monsters or whatever. And but the sense that the world is literally falling apart because of the manipulation of this one event, and manipulating it, turning that dial to the left or the right in that book. We see, no spoilers, but that it affects the world in ways that are bringing about its unmaking. And so that's, I think, a really good example of terror. And so where else would you guys say that you see this concept of terror, that we don't see a monster necessarily, but we feel a sense of unease, we feel a sense that everything is falling apart? Where do we see that manifest in King?
Oh, in King himself? Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Let me go through the old bibliography now through the years. Well, like, anyone else to pick this up, I'll think of something.
Well, yeah, like, I think personally, there's an aspect of that in The Shining, because in The Shining, especially especially
at the beginning,
if I look at Kubrick's movie, I feel like Kubrick's movie is versus King's book, because in the book, obviously, the monsters are real. In Kubrick's, we're not sure if they're real or not, but that is a good example, I think, of the idea that we're watching this family, unmake itself. Like, we're watching this family corrupt itself and fall apart for reasons that we can't fully put our hand on, that we can't put a finger on.
I think I have a couple examples I can think of at the top of my head.
Yeah.
Because something like Children of the Corn, when Bert and his wife, I forgot her name. Anyway, when they're walking around town, there's nobody there. Mm-hmm. But there's still that sense to them that there is something very wrong going on there. And then even as Salem's Lot goes along, in broad daylight, I think Ben's out there, and he still senses that there's something wrong. Like, there's not as many people walking around as there should be. Again, this is nothing disgusting happening and nothing horrific happening. It's all about what he's perceiving, or
and it implies a larger. Like, at the end, when that the god or whoever it is that does, do away with them at the end.
He walks behind the rose.
Yeah, he who walks behind the rose. It implies a larger, grander horror that we can't put our finger on. I mean, it's very Lovecraftian in that sense, and it's the sense that whatever and it's, even though I'd say a story like Gray Matter from Night Shift is, obviously more of a horror story, which we'll touch on, and even a revulsion, like, it touches on revulsion, in a lot of ways. I feel like that's a story that encompasses all three, because in the end, there is the terror that whatever this is has the ability to destroy the entire world, like, if it is unleashed. And I think that's like a really neat idea. So what other thoughts do you guys have about terror?
Are we allowed to jump forward?
Yes,
okay,
please.
Stuff we haven't covered yet. One of the most terrifying in this way stories, I think, for me personally, is The Jaunt.
Yes.
That's a little, I guess, Lovecraftian in the whole, like, you cannot see this and remain sane. Although it's more about the length of time that you spend within the unknown. The whole story is just based around this, like, what is it? How bad is it? And I guess at the end we go into some horror, maybe some revulsion, but that whole cosmic fear of just nothingness and the void, and who knows what's in there, and you can't experience it without breaking your mind. Like, that's some classic, that's the good stuff.
I always like
chef's kiss.
It's a lot of storytelling within the story that's going on in that too.
I always like the end of the part in The Jaunt when they put the mouse in backwards and it's fine, but then they put it in forwards and it's completely psychotic. Like, that's such a neat little idea to me. But
that short story still sticks with me.
I know, and that's the funny thing is, like, with a lot of these short story books, like, I haven't read them in so long, and even Night Shift, it was kind of like this, like, you remember the big ones, the ones that really resonated, and sort of the real joy of rereading them is re-experiencing. Like, The John is one I'll always remember because it's such a memorable story, but, like, when we talk about film adaptations of short stories, and I'm like, I don't remember that one, but I'm excited to go reread it because I read it so young, I probably just didn't get it. I mean, it was kind of like we all responded to Last Rung on the Ladder when we read Night Shift, because when I was young, that story wasn't the sort of thing that I was looking for from Stephen King. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, man, that was amazing.
Also, I just think anything that seems baseless, but in its randomness has this hint of malevolence. Like, just even the concept of 19 in The Gunslinger, where I don't even remember what actually happens. It was a long time ago. But she says it, or she sees it, or
she knows. She says she knows what. We'll get into that. But she knows what it is.
She reads it on something, doesn't she? Or he whispers it in her ear. And then
That's it.
just loses it.
Yeah.
Well, I always love, like, I always remember, like, Rose Madder as well. Like, Rose Madder, I think, is a horror, like, that's one of the examples where he was able to take, you know, like, we talk, you know, he talks about in horror, you mentioned earlier, the idea that we see something that is physically wrong. You know, the monster in Rose Madder is her husband, but throughout the course of the story, he manipulates that character and makes him so cruel and so evil that he becomes physically wrong in a way. Like, he becomes so monstrous that he doesn't resemble a human anymore. And so when they do, spoiler alert, enter the painting at that one point and go to that other world, though, I think that's sort of when the terror starts to creep in, because we're in a place where the horror itself is transcending just this mere relationship between these two people, and it's encompassing this entire world in ways that feel like it's having an impact on the grander world itself. And that to me is, I think, what can really elevate a story. And King calls it the finest emotion, terror. You know, he's and whereas he compares that to horror, which he calls less fine because it is not entirely of the mind.
I do like that when he talks about terror, though. He says he recognizes the finest emotion. He will always try to terrorize the reader. And he says, but if I cannot terrify him or her, I will try to horrify.
Yeah.
And if I cannot horrify, I'll go for the gross out. I'm not proud.
Yeah.
Hey, bring it on. We love it all. That's fine.
I'll say, do you think this might be a good time to chat, too, about the concept of... because I think he says that horror is art, and we're going to touch on this a little bit more later, too. But this idea that horror is art, he sometimes feels like fails or tries to achieve terror by not showing, like, I'll read this section here that I think, you know, that he describes artistic horror as a disappointment, and this is why. He says, what's behind the door or lurking at the top of the stairs is never as frightening as the door or the staircase itself. And because of this comes the paradox. The artistic work of horror is almost always a disappointment. It is the classic no-win situation. You can scare people with the unknown for a long, long time, but sooner or later, as in poker, you have to turn your cards up. You have to open the door and show the audience what's behind it.
And I do love that, because I really do agree with that. Because, you know, and I reference like it, like it's never the reveal of the monsters. It's never going to be as scary as what you've come up with in your mind, which is kind of the point of the whole thing. Is like everybody sees what, you know, they fear the most or whatever. And
that's an example of him going for it. He has to
right.
Just go for it.
And I think at the time maybe this is true, but I feel like we've seen a lot of stuff these days where they don't give the ghost away. They don't show you. They never actually show you, you know, what
the Blair Witch,
the scary. Yeah, exactly. And like, and he cites that in the revised version.
Oh, does he really?
He talks about Blair Witch for a long time, about how scary it is, and you never see the Blair Witch. Spoiler alert. But if you want to see the Blair Witch, you can see the remake /
That's a sequel.
Anyways,
Well, they confirmed that the filmmakers said that what we see in that remake is not the Blair Witch.
I got to watch it again. I got to see it again. Now.
I think that was
I think
that was their last bit at another sequel, but that movie did not do very well.
Yeah.
But then, just continuing that, there has always been a school of horror writers, he says, I am not among them, who believe that the way to beat this rap is to never open the door at all. And then he talks about The Haunting of Hill House, and I think that sort of ties into terror to a degree, and we can discuss how this concept manifests in modern horror a little bit later, because we're going to talk about modern film and modern books as it relates to these things. But I think that's an interesting concept. I mean, I disagree with that personally. I kind of love stories that don't open the door. Like Blair Witch, I think, is a great example.
I'm with you, Randall.
Yeah,
I agree. I think the problem now, especially nowadays, is that we are shown way too much.
Yeah.
Whether it's throughout a film or a book or at the very end. And it just, for me, I know the ending should necessarily ruin the entire experience, but for me, it really still does. Mm-hmm. And so something like the Blair Witch Project, where you don't see the witch. I know people that would prefer to have seen the witch even to this day.
That's bizarre to me.
And to me, that's the whole lack of
that's how I recognize a true Philistine.
Yeah.
That's one of your first dates.
Oh, now we're one of those hoity-toity professors now.
Oh, that's
here.
why I was single for so long.
That's right. It was date number one. How do you feel about the Blair Witch Project? But it's funny because even he talks about a little bit The Curse of the Demon, this really terrifying movie from the 50s.
Isn't that the Night of the Demon?
Night of the Demon.
Yeah.
I think there's actually a sequel called Curse of the Demon.
Probably.
Wait,
But
Night of the
probably,
Demon or
right?
Night of the Hunter?
No,
Night of the Demon.
Oh, okay.
Demon.
Yeah, it's Demon.
Okay, good.
You don't see the demon at all. And then the last, I think, 3 minutes, you see the demon. and it's just
You know what it reminded me of when I saw that
like a
picture?
tiki
It kind of
creature.
reminded me of the television miniseries, like the creature from like the spider at the end.
Oh, yeah.
you
Like
finally
the face
see that,
of
the
it kind
close-up.
of looks like that
Yeah.
a little bit, which I thought, I wonder if.
So for me, I mean, I don't mind. Look, I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it to a certain point when a writer of film or of a book does go for it. But sometimes going for it means not showing everything and really just depending upon what you've written before, and also, respecting the imagination of the reader or the viewer.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it a little bit more sometimes.
I think he's saying the hardest thing to do, but
Yeah.
the most rewarding thing to do is to do the suspense, not show anything, and then show it, and it's not such a letdown, right?
Yeah.
And I think I agree with that. Like,
Yeah.
I would like to hear more examples, because I can't think of too many off the top of my head other
Sure.
than Blair Witch, of you guys thinking it doesn't show anything and it succeeds, because I
Yeah.
think that's still a kind of cop-out.
Yeah. I can, and
The
he
best
calls
example
it.
for me that really works is Jaws, which I will sing its praises.
Yes.
I haven't until I die.
Yeah.
But,
Of course.
yeah, so I'd be interested in hearing, like, K-Pax? Like, you never know.
I never saw K-Pax.
I will use a modern
that old
example
horror
though,
movie.
of an outcome, especially is something like with It Follows.
Yeah.
The very, very end of It Follows. And
But we still never see what the real thing is.
that's what I like, is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
I like that. I like that there's not some big reveal about what this demon has been the entire time or anything like that.
But I sort of think that because you see the aftermath of what it does, and because what it is a shapeshifter first and foremost. Like, I never thought, like, oh, we didn't see the monster.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
But
I mean the actual outcome of the film. Like,
Yeah.
because we see somebody way down the sidewalk.
Well,
we don't
the
know if that's
film
just a person or if that's
can't go
just
on
somebody
for 8
going on.
years. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, we don't know if they actually won at the end of the day. That's what I'm saying.
Well, no,
Did
I'm
they win or
saying-
didn't
Yeah,
they
no,
win,
that's
you know?
true, okay.
Yeah.
I think we're saying that that's a successful film.
That's what I'm
Right,
saying.
yeah.
I like that.
Love it.
I'm just using that as an
Because
example.
I think that that's a great movie that it doesn't have a clear monster, but then it achieves like the reveal of what it is. We never see what It Follows actually is, and we shouldn't, but they do such a great job of that during the final confrontation. What it manifests as is her father, and that is, to me, like such a powerful, like that's such a great reveal.
Yeah.
Like that's not the actual thing, but that is the
I never
scariest
thought
thing.
it had a base form. Like,
Well, I mean,
am I supposed
so
to?
it's-
I don't
whatever
know.
you
We'll
see-
wait for the prequel
Yeah.
or whatever the hell they're going to do next.
well,
what they're doing.
It begins.
Well, I just think the neat
Sounds
idea. I think it's just sort of the neat idea that it could have a base form, and that they didn't show us what it is, because a lot of movies would show us some kind of base form. And I think the real success of that movie is that it doesn't. But see, and this is obviously there's so many ways to approach it, and I
Yeah.
think that's like, and I think he's saying that, and I didn't mean to tie necessarily terror to him saying that quote unquote artistic horror is a disappointment a lot of times,
Yeah.
because I think that obviously, and those discussions are like 100 pages apart, I think, but it's I just think it's sort of a neat way to tie those things together. But then I think, so let's pivot over into horror on this sort of triptych of things that he discusses, and horror he describes as less fun. We said this earlier, but there's a little bit more, not entirely of the mind, and that it gives us a physical reaction by showing us something that is physically wrong, and he calls it the emotion or fear that underlies terror, and he calls it the amorphous and also very physical thing, and he uses monster comics to kind of as an example of the horror that at least he grew up with. But I think this is sort of the monster movie sort of thing. So where would you guys, I guess, just to kick off kind of a little chat about how horror functions in or this definition of horror functions in the larger scheme of horror. Like, where do we see this definition of horror? Where do we see it manifesting King's work?
Ooh, King's work. You know what?
Like, there's obviously there's the Boogeyman, which lays it out right in there in the title, the short story.
Boogeyman.
Mr. Bogeman. But he, because that's a story where we literally see, the therapist character morph into this, literal like monster being that sounds like it's speaking through seaweed or whatever.
Well, even if you look at his 70s work, for instance, The Shining, I think the scene with the Utopia animals is more of a terror sequence.
Yeah.
But then later on, obviously, when things start to manifest,
Oh, yeah.
that's
When it
when
attacks.
the horror enters the picture. Yes,
Yeah.
and when you actually see the lion attacking Dick at the very end, for instance,
Scatman.
that's a good example of that.
Or even like like the vampires in
Yeah, of
Salem's
course.
Lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Seeing the vampires in action, yeah.
Cycle of the Werewolf.
Yeah.
In
Actual werewolves.
all
Yeah.
the kids, there's like this weird transition from like it's not really going to be there, it's not really going to be there in it, but then they see it,
Yeah.
it's real,
Yeah.
and we go from terror to horror, sometimes revulsion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just
There's plenty of revulsion coming.
yeah, there's lots of
Just
revulsion.
hang on,
stuff.
everyone.
But no, it is definitely, I think, an interesting example because even though, we don't really know what the final form, quote unquote, of it is, the spider is ostensibly the farthest form that we'll be able to witness. And the only, I think that it's kind of a prime definition of horror, like this idea of the physical being that kind of destroys us. Like, do you guys remember in It, spoiler alert for It, do you guys remember how Bev's douchebag husband, like they see his body down in its lair and it's like his eyes are like bloody because he just looked at the thing and it killed him.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was so scary to me when I was
The
young.
deadlights.
Yeah, the deadlights and like how much it destroyed Henry Bowers like by looking into them. And like, the part that's always, this is kind of silly maybe, but I've always been so terrified by in the miniseries when the tall Belch, the tall kid, like when he gets like bent in half and gets pulled into the pipe by the deadlights.
Yeah.
Ooh, I forgot about that.
Oh man, it's such a great effect too. Like it's good shit. So hopefully Andres Muschietti, that you're
I want to see some
emulating that.
backbreaking.
I want to see some
Stuck
backbreaking.
through sewer pipes.
I was going to say, I feel like I just read something recently that said that they're not going to have a scene, and they mentioned something about like bending a boy in half or something.
I
Is
think
that something
that's
different?
more about the Hochstetter sequence from the book is apparently not going to be in the movie.
Okay.
Which
no,
makes
what?
well, I feel like half of that might not make sense in the movie, but the other half, come on, put it.
Well, he's on a missing poster in the trailer,
Sure
so
is.
I assume we see him.
I love this bit about monstrosity being about lack of order. I
Yeah.
remember taking a class in college where they talked about how lobsters and flying squirrels could be terrifying to people who had never encountered them before because a lobster is a giant bug, but it lives in the ocean.
Yeah.
A flying squirrel is a mammal that can suddenly fly, and they were talking about people who had never seen flying squirrels before who were terrified by them
Yeah.
because it just totally violates all the categories that we have in our brains for what should fit in what boxes, and that's horrifying.
It's true because I feel like now I would be more frightened by just like a smooth, hairy, like hair, that sounds disgusting.
Smooth,
a
hairy.
smooth, a smooth like rat, as opposed to like a
bald
giant
rat?
a lobstrosity, as it were, a bald rat. Now that might still horrify me, actually, though.
Well, it's kind of
Naked mole rat?
albino rat. Just
Well, it's
running
kind of
around with
like how
red eyes.
they, there's those photos that I'll post of like a completely shaven bear or whatever, and it like looks really uncanny and weird. There's also like, I think this is why I'm so fascinated by like aquatic, like nautical horror, because
Yeah.
there's so many things that live in the ocean that we still have not seen. And so whenever like a new, like, the first time you see an image of like a goblin fish or whatever, it's so scary because you never have seen these things before, and then they pop up and like,
And they're probably harmless.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, not the goblin shark.
Yeah.
Oh, what does the
Check
goblin
out,
do?
check out that GIF. It just like protrudes its whole jaw and
Oh,
it
man.
grabs
Yeah,
a diver's arm. It's got this pointy snoot. You got goblin
Yeah.
sharks.
I've never seen the
shit.
GIF. I've only seen
it
the.
That
looks
doesn't
like-
sound very nice at all.
No, it looks like it dislocates like its jaw and it comes out almost like the muscles and stuff come out of its mouth.
So this
Like a
is
snake.
terror now for
Well,
you
like,
because it's still the unknown. You've never
right, it's
seen
still
it.
my
No,
imagination.
it's like Alien. It's like Alien. It's like the second mouth comes out. It's like
Oh.
creepy.
And then there's like those fish that have like human teeth. Have you seen those?
Yes.
Like it's just
Oh,
so.
the ones that kind of smile. Like
yeah, it's so wrong, And I think that's really neat. I think that's why like I just read Nick Cutter's The Deep, which is a pretty solid, interesting horror novel, and that's one of the reasons it scares me so much is because these guys are going literally to the bottom of the Mariana Trench to go to this research station, and just the journey in the submarine that's just plummeting straight down to the bottom of the ocean, and all the various, like a giant squid kind of attacks them at one point, and like all these things that exist so far deep below the water, these fish that are like translucent because they're never around light in any way, shape, or form, and just the pitch blackness. I think that's like the closest thing in our real world to where horrific monsters still lie.
the ocean is truly
yeah.
the final frontier.
Yeah. Well,
I would say you're a little
Why are we
monstrous.
going to space?
I would say you're a little monstrous for attacking these fish that just want to be human. The human teeth.
Oh, come
They're
on.
trying to be human.
They're not trying to be human.
Hey, it's
They're an abomination of in the eyes of God.
True.
They were created by
Yes.
Satan himself.
Whoa.
I'm just kidding. So yeah, I think horror is neat in that way. I mean, sometimes I'm watching a horror movie, and if it's not like, I remember. Okay, this is a kind of a dumb example, but it's a good example. Have you guys seen the movie The Boogeyman? Like, not the story
With the
King
kid
story.
from Seventh Heaven?
Yes, that kid from
Very-
Seventh Heaven. You know his
no,
name?
I haven't.
I haven't seen it
I'm a
either.
pop culture junkie.
Well, it's not very good.
It's not Barry Gordy. He discovered the Jacksons.
I'm just thinking of Mr. Boogedy.
Watson, Barry Watson. I
Mr.
think, right?
Boge. It's not a very good movie at all, but I'll say this: as I was watching it, I kept going back and forth between okay, the only way this movie will be satisfying is if the boogeyman is actually in this guy's head, because he thinks that this boogeyman killed his parents when he was young, and and I'm thinking, well, the obvious route they're going to go is that it was all in his head and like he killed his parents or something, and like that's the big twist. But then the movie, it keeps changing. Like, I think that's probably part of the reason why it doesn't really work, is that the logic of everything keeps changing, and the sequences just don't make sense in regards to whether it's real or whether it's fake. And I remember arriving at a point in the movie where I go, the only way this is redeemable in any way, shape, or form is if the boogeyman is actually real, because they've forecasted the idea that it's fake so hard that it'll be so deflating and boring if that's the case. So I was like, the only way this could be good is if we see it and it's real and it's a monster, and then it's satisfying. And that was the case. Spoiler alert for the boogeyman. That was the case, but it was a CGI monster, so it wasn't very scary. But that's sort of the pitfall, is like, the only way the movie would have been satisfying is if I saw the monster, but then the monster wasn't scary.
He talks about that, the importance of the reveal, and how most pieces of art can't be sustained on terror alone.
Yeah.
You have to show the people the monster. You have to give the people what they want.
Yeah.
Even though 80% of the time, 90% of the time, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's it.
Do you think that when it comes, I've been racking my brain when it comes to terror and horror. What do you think would identify as being a solely horror film with no terror in it? A slasher film, like when they reveal somebody right off the bat, like before the credits, like a Jason film, for
And
instance.
it's like a human.
Yeah, like a Friday the 13th movie, where like right away you see the killer killing somebody, and it's Jason, or it's the
Mr.
ghost of Jason
Mercedes.
or something like that. Mr. Mercedes is actually there.
To a degree, if you look at the man as monster.
That's right.
But
That's
Brady is
straight up.
monstrous.
Yeah.
I feel like I had a few in my notes here. Let me look at this really quick, because I had Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer as kind of just a pure
That's actually
horror.
a good example.
Yeah.
Because there's no mystery. It's just straight into the horror. And it works, though.
But we're also following the monster the whole way. Like, he's our main character. But I don't know. I was thinking about that, and I was like, I think that's sort of a purely horror movie. And then the Evil Dead, the Evil Dead movies.
Well, that's very like the force zooming through the woods is totally unknown, kind of. I mean, they summon it with this book, but you're like, what is it?
Yeah, but we're confronted by the zombies to such a degree
totally.
that I think
it also becomes Revulsion ultimately, too.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
It covers all three.
Let's not kid ourselves.
Did you know that Evil Dead is a gross movie?
Yes, I know. I was thinking that too. And then I feel like I had a few others. I mean, would you say like The Thing, like Carpenter's The Thing?
I think that works on. Well, because we don't know what that. For instance, when we see the wolf or the dog running through the Arctic,
Yeah, I guess
we
you're
don't know-
right.
That's legit where he gets the thing without a name.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
So I think it starts as terror.
Oh, and then I had a movie I didn't like, but I think is a good example of it is Lights Out. The movie that came out, I think it was last year by this point. That's a movie I didn't really enjoy, but I'll say that, it's a movie that kind of sets up what its monster is straight away. And it scares you because you see, because it's whenever the lights are out, that's when the thing can come get you.
This reminds me of The Descent.
Oh, The Descent is so good.
That's maybe horror.
Yeah.
That's true, because there's no real instance of it. It's just there's spelunking, and then we see the
Well, the question, because for the first half of that movie, the horror is environmental. It's like it's about
so
the
scary.
claustrophobia. Yeah, and a lot of people would say that's this. Like my wife, I tried showing her The Descent, and she couldn't she didn't know there was going to be monsters, and she was already like having crazy
Love
anxiety.
that.
I know, she was already having like crazy anxiety just about like the claustrophobia of the movie, and then monsters showed up. She goes, "And there's monsters. Fuck this."
Hey, that monster reveal is great.
Oh, I know. I love it. That's like one of my favorite horror movies of the last several years.
Yeah.
But I think Lights Out is a good example because the monster is there. You only see it in the darkness, and kind of a lot of the movie is about the reveal of what the monster actually looks like. You see it in silhouette, but it doesn't fully reveal itself until the end. And I will say that it looks kind of cool, even though I don't really like that movie. So. So yeah, I think horror. If there's something that we're going to touch on a lot of recent horror movies and how these things kind of apply to them. I think that if there's something that I've noticed now versus, and maybe this isn't the case, but it's just my modern reading of it versus a lot of old, like because in the old days there was like old monster movies like Vampire, Dracula, and Frankenstein and stuff like that,
And the werewolf
and the Mummy, and but I think that in modern days it's. I see these lines being traversed and broken a lot more. Like I see multiple movies that are on our list. I was like, well, this does embody a lot of like creeping dread, and then there is a horrific element, and the witness of this physical being that attacks them, and then there's revulsion when people are puking up goo in whatever form. So I think that that's kind of a neat thing to keep in mind as we move on, and I think it is a good time then to move on to the next fork in this pitchfork.
Bloody fork
Is revulsion. And that's, basically what it sounds like. King is discussing movies that they are there to gross you out. They want to make you feel sick in your belly and things like that. And he posits David Cronenberg as sort of the master of that because he's a guy who could take revulsion and sort of, we kind of look at him as sort of the popularizer or the man who made body horror artistic,
He talks about The Brood, correct?
Yeah.
Because this would have been, The Brood would have been out, Shivers, which I think he also talks
They
about
Came
briefly
From
as They Came From
Yeah,
Within.
yeah.
And then Rabid, right?
Yeah,
that would have been the major
a little bit.
ones he did.
But he definitely
he
talks about
touches on
Shivers,
Rabid?
Yeah.
I missed
Briefly,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I love Cronenberg, and I think the body horror, that's the thing that disturbs me most, is like body horror, and I think that, excuse me.
It's very emotional talking about body horror.
Well, I was going
tearing
to
up.
talk about, I was like, the first time I saw Shivers, which I did see actually recently for the first time, as I was deep diving into Cronenberg stuff. But yeah, it's got some pretty unsettling things that happen in that, and I would definitely say that a lot of that's revulsion to an extent.
I think that's what revulsion does that the other ones do, but not as strongly, is create a physical reaction, which is kind of fun. And I think that the people who would defend and say that they enjoy movies like Saw and things like that, which is a tough defense these days, I think they like it because for the revulsion aspect, because it makes you cringe. It makes you, grab your arm or grab your nuts or grab your whatever when things are being destroyed on that part of the
grab
body.
your what?
Your nuts.
Oh, your nuts.
My nuts.
God.
Gotcha. I just didn't. I
Or your whatever.
Or your whatever.
Yeah, it's like Hostel or those kinds of films that are just violent for violence sake. Not that there's no art in Hostel, but
Yeah, there's I think there's a lot to discuss in that regard. Just the idea of, I think torture porn as a genre kind of it's always been around to some degree, but I think it kind of surfaced or was popularized in the early 2000s, kind of post 9/11 with the Saw movies and with Hostel and with.
I think something like the Saw or Hostel. I think you look at like a forefather, that would be like The Last House on the Left, for example. That would be an example of torture porn before the definition was coined.
Or it's interesting too because then you have stuff like Hellraiser, which I think is, literally the first scene is like the Cenobites, and Frank, so they show them right away. So it's like horror, but then all the body horror stuff in it is very,
Plus
just
the unknown
disgusting.
of like, what are these creatures?
Right,
What is
so
their mission?
it's
Do
a little,
they feel? It's
yeah,
a little bit of everything.
It's a little bit of everything. So thanks, Clive.
Pleasure or pain,
Where would you
It's
guys?
sublime, man.
Where would you guys see revulsion popping up in King's work?
It's funny, as much as King gets kind of to us it's not a stigma, but to a lot of people it's a stigma as him being just kind of this gross horror writer.
Yeah.
When you look at his bibliography, there's definitely horror elements in most of his work, but In terms of real gross out's sake, I mean, there's obviously scenes in it, for example,
Yeah.
that are
Leeches.
gross. People's heads getting ripped off. Yeah.
King hates leeches. He mentions them several times in this book.
That's even in The Body. I think we talked about The Body in the past. And I'm looking through his...
I would say,
You know what's a great example, I think?
What?
And maybe the cheapest example? The shit weasel in Dreamcatcher.
Oh yeah,
That's just disgusting.
Yeah. Or the short story where the guy's trapped in a porta potty.
Oh, God, there we go. That's one of my great
What is that
nightmares,
called?
by the
Does
way.
anyone remember what that story is called?
I think it's called Shit Weasel.
I think it's called Shit Nightmare.
It would
Yeah.
be the best
Shit nightmare.
It's not called this, but it would be perfect if it was
Now
called...
you need to write that story.
The best title would have been Shit Out of Luck. That would have been the best title. Keep talking about I'll look at that real quick.
Well,
You're driving me crazy.
I'll say this: like, when I was thinking back on King works that had a sense of revulsion in them, I was thinking of The Dark Half, actually, because The Dark Half is to me a book that kind of revels in a little bit of body horror in its own way.
Yeah.
Like, there's a scene. Do you remember the scene in like there's the obsession with the pencils in Dark Half
yeah.
and sharpening the pencils,
Yes.
and he like drives one. I think Stark, the doppelganger, he drives one like through his hand, and it's like such a brutal, disgusting scene where he creates this hole in his hand and he like stares at it through a he stares at himself in the mirror through it, and then
yeah.
there's that one guy that gets killed and they cut off his penis and put it in his mouth, and then and the other one that always sticks with me and that always gets me, and we're going to touch on kind of our pressure points when it comes to, because King talks about pressure points when it comes to revulsion, things that we can't handle, and we all have our own signature ones, but eyes are tough for a lot of people, and there's a scene in The Dark Half where it's actually an excerpt from one of George Stark's books, or is it George Stark or Richard Stark?
No, it's George Stark.
Okay, George Stark. From his books where they talk about a guy with his eyes closed and his hands bound, and then putting a paperclip through the lid into his eye.
You do.
Yeah, it's a scene I cannot. I remember, and the way it's described is like he really indulges
Yeah.
in it. So I don't know. When I was thinking back, like as much as King is depicted as this gross out horror writer to a lot of degrees, I had a hard time too thinking of books that really indulged in it. I mean, he gets a little gory. I was even thinking about The Stand and sort of the scene when they stumble across the biker dudes who are holding the women as sex slaves.
Yeah.
And when the way he describes them getting killed is like so graphic.
The best is he gets very technical about it, and
Yes.
that works in its favor. Like the end of Gerald's game, for example. I don't want to spoil Gerald's game, especially since it's being made right now as an adaptation.
We'll be covering
but-
it any day now.
Oh
Yeah.
man, just the what she does is
I remember-
described in detail.
Well, and then there's for instance, you don't think of Misery as this gross out horror novel, but there's definitely a couple disgusting moments, but a really disgusting moment involving amputation. And then coddering wounds, which is
It's
absolutely
nasty stuff.
revolting.
Yes.
So that's a good example.
Yeah, so I think I think it'd be fun to kind of go around and each of us share sort of our pressure points, like the things that when we see them in a movie, when we read about them in a book, when we see them in any sort of fashion, they roil our stomach or force us to close our eyes or anything like that. Mel, do you want to kick us off on this?
Sure. I guess it kind of combines horror and revulsion for me, but any kind of grotesque, forced surgery,
Yes.
unwanted melding of body parts where the person does not consent. And it's why I haven't seen such jokes of films like Tusk and The Human Centipede, because I can't, just the concept really bothers me.
yeah.
I
And
remember
those
sitting
movies
by
indulge in
my
it,
Google
too.
image search bar being like, oh, I gotta end of Tusk monster. I just have to see it so that I can get over this.
Honestly, if you did just jump to the end of Tusk Monster, it's like laughable.
I mean, people say this, but this
Yeah.
is just, it just really bothers me. Any sort of amputations like you're talking about, or just things that, they were put under against their will, and then they wake up and they're a monster.
And I think that's sort of like I think that's why Human Centipede was so successful, because it's not a good movie. Like, well, I haven't seen it, but I'm going by because
It's something to laugh at.
Yeah,
really.
I'll talk about why I haven't seen it because it touches on my pressure points. But that's the thing, is I think the concept in itself was genius, mainly because it touched on so many pressure points. And that's the kind of stuff that's really going to get people, talking about it and excited about it and like, oh my God, can you believe this? Because, at this point we've seen enough eyes, because I can't deal with eye violence or ear violence. And I'm going to touch on that. But it's like, you can only so many movies have done the eye thing, but how many movies have done, sew someone's mouth onto yeah, exactly. And so in that sense, I'll say, Human Centipede for me is one of my pressure points is just feces in any kind of horror regard. I cannot deal with shit being used for horrific purposes. And so the concept of people shitting into each other's mouths is something to me that is
How do you deal
very,
with
very
train spotting?
That's a rough that scene. That's the funny thing is the toilet scene is great. Like, I think that's hilarious because there's no shit in it. It's just a gross bathroom. But later,
you should watch that scene again. I think there's definitely a lot.
He's so traumatized. He's blocked out.
It's like clear blue water to Randall now.
Well, yeah, but it's not. I'll say that the part that grosses me out more in Train Spotting is Spud when he shits the sheets, and then the blanket gets like whipped and it gets all over everybody.
God.
That's the part that makes me sick to my stomach. So it's like, so that was the reason that I refused to see Human Centipede. But I was just like Mel in the sense that when fellow loser Dan Caffrey went and saw it, I made him describe the entire movie to me in detail because I needed to know.
Well, let me ask you one more question about shit, and we can get off of shit. How'd you feel about your favorite movie character Stifler in American Wedding when he had to eat that shit? Shit off the ground?
I have a confession. I've seen American Pie.
Oh my God!
I've seen American Pie 2. And I have seen American Reunion.
You have not.
I have not seen American Wedding.
Awe, as we call it,
as we call it
in the biz. Well, I'm sorry I spoiled that amazing moment of cinema for you, but
Stifler drinks cum in the first one. So
you gotta keep him.
But I've got no qualms about cum. So I'm
rank
good.
your bodily fluids.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'll just say very basically though that I do still struggle with eyes and ears. Main examples: ears. Freddy's Dead, horrible film, but literally the worst death I have ever seen in a movie because we did a feature on Consequence of Sound, you could look it up, where we ranked every kill in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. This was about 2-3 years ago, and you guys all forced me to write about the ear one where the woman jams. It was like it just kept being left open, and I was like, fine, I'll take it. But it was, literally like the part where his head explodes is fine. I can deal with that. But there's a scene when a woman jams a Q-tip in his ear, and that's the scene I cannot handle because it's so. And I've had a history of ear problems in my life, so I think it feeds into that. And then for eyes, we were discussing this earlier. Lucio Fulci's The Beyond, Italian horror movie. It is a brilliant horror movie, and I love it. But there is a scene in that where a man lays on the ground as spiders eat his eyeballs out of his head, and I cannot handle it. And, even earlier we were laughing, and like, it looks so fake, but it's like, I still can't.
Maybe this is very personal. Maybe mine stems from the fact that my parents took me to get my tonsils out without telling me what was going to occur.
Are you kidding me?
There you go.
Yeah, they were like, you'll wake up and get all the ice cream. I was like, good deal.
Do whatever you want to me. Just give me
ice cream. I woke up
cream.
and I was like, I was robbed.
That's true. That kind of goes back to your fear of the whole, having the surgery done. And God, maybe this is all psychological. But then my biggest pressure point fear is like limbs going the wrong way, like bones being broken and going the wrong way. But that's the thing that didn't happen to me until no kidding, 2 years ago. I busted my finger. That's it.
Wait, your finger went backwards?
Well, no, but it wouldn't go all the way back. Remember when anyway, playing football, boring story. Bottom line is, but I do remember, so for me, for instance, Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, bad movie, okay?
Yeah.
Bad movie. But there's a sequence where I forgot the bounty hunter's name, Stephen Williams from the X-Files. He grabs this other guy's finger and he's trying to get information out of him. And he keeps threatening him. He says, every time you lie to me, I'm going to dislocate your finger. And so, God, even thinking of it now grosses me out. Of all the Jason things don't gross me out, but it's this guy with the bounty hunter. And so every time there'll be like a beat, and then you hear the snapping or the breaking of the finger. Yeah. And that to me is just awful. I think maybe because that's more likely to happen to me than Jason throwing a spear through me.
Sure.
So maybe that's where that fear comes in. The possibility. That's what disturbs me more than anything else.
Graphic in Blade Runner when he's doing
that's a great example. When
that is tough
when
too.
Batty's got hair, that's also tough to watch for me.
Tough.
Mac,
Again, I can watch people's heads getting chopped off, no problem.
You guys named like a lot of good stuff. For me, it's definitely the eyes. Something I just thought of when you brought up Friday the 13th was kneecaps. anything happening with the kneecap.
Yeah.
And which one is that, Justin? You want to elaborate on
Justin's
that?
literally vomiting.
Terrific film.
Another porta potty death.
You're right.
actually.
Another porta potty death. Back to the porta potties. I forgot the name of the actor, but he did play the title role in Juwanna Man.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah. If we can remember his name.
He's in the Saved by the Bell episode where Zach goes through boot camp. He plays the drill sergeant.
I think you're right. You're right.
Oh wait,
Back to horror.
no, it isn't.
No, you know what? That's the same guy from Slam Dunk Ernest, Randall. But we'll get
Oh my
we'll get
God,
back to that
Slam
later.
Dunk Ernest.
Wow.
Okay, sorry.
No, but this guy, so he's singing with his girlfriend back and forth, and all of a sudden his girlfriend doesn't return the singing outside the porta potty, and then he looks outside, she's dead. So he freaks out, closes the porta potty back up. He just sits there, waiting for something to happen. And this huge metal rod goes through the porta potty and goes right through his kneecap, and then goes right back out again. Mac, that's a good one now.
And what
Really
movie?
gross.
Wait, what movie's that?
I'm sorry, we should make this specific. It's the fantastic 1985 film Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
Oh yes, I have seen that. Okay.
Friday the 13th, Part 5. I like that Part 5 made it into the
Roman
conversation.
numeral 5, don't forget.
Why are they singing to each other?
Because they're in love.
They're young, they're in
he
love.
announces he has diarrhea because he had bad Mexican too. And I guess she's just standing right outside the porta potty while he's having a stomach ache. Look, I
Hey
don't
man,
write-
that's what you do when
Ask
you're
Danny
when
Steinman.
you're in a committed relationship. I can
That's
attest.
true love, though. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's true.
Other than that, just any body horror stuff. Like I was saying earlier with the, Cronenberg's or Dead Ringers. Just like even
Dead Ringers.
just can't handle it.
That hits mine too. That's kind of like he's doing shit up in there.
That's like 2 for 1.
Yeah.
And then definitely the ending of The Brood. Just things that aren't right.
That's the best way to put it.
What's the Argento movie with the needles on the bottom of the eyelids?
Oh my god.
Opera.
Ugh.
We can go all day with Argento.
I mean, with all those Italian guys. I mean,
yeah,
like
right.
the Italians.
Oh, no joke.
I mean, and the thing about Italian horror that gets me too is that their makeup that they use, like the effects that they would use in those 80s, 70s, and 80s movies, they just look so different than in other movies. Like in The Beyond, for example, the guy, like the evil plumber, the plumber man that comes back, he's not really evil, but I guess he gets possessed. But it's like his face, like it looks so unnatural because it's so caked with makeup. Like it looks like a mask,
It's almost more fantastical because, it's obviously with the blood, it's just absolutely no question about it. It's always just red paint. They're not even trying to make it look like blood,
Right.
But there's something... I don't want to say gorgeous, but it's something beautiful about it. I don't know.
Well, when I was a kid-
we're all talking about horror, so I guess it's gorgeous to us.
Well, when I was a kid, I remember watching Dawn of the Dead was just on HBO or something, and I watched it in my bedroom, and I was so scared because not just the revulsion of people's intestines getting ripped out, but I hated the color of the blood.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that it was so bright red, that really bothered me when I was young. And I think that's almost horror in its own way because it's something physical and unnatural that really bothered me. Like I wanted it to be a darker red. I wanted it to be like crimson, So I hated that it looked like, paint. Like that was very gross to me. It's kind of like I'll be more grossed out if this is going to sound really bizarre, but I can take blood in movies, no problem. But if in a movie, somebody gets covered in ketchup, that's so disgusting to me.
I am mustard for me. It's like,
Mustard too. Well,
You and mustard.
that's a whole other story.
Dumb and Dumber. Neither
I
of
should
us
say
can
my
watch that scene.
revulsions are mustard, people getting their bones broken, and then that's
Pickles.
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 Love pickles.
But as far as shit goes, A-okay.
I would rather, Mel, I would rather get stuck in that porta potty from that Stephen King short story than have to deal with a pickle. I'll put it that way.
Jesus Christ.
That's
Disgusting.
ridiculous.
The worst of God's foods.
So what would we say that we prefer out of the three of these? If we're going to a horror movie, do we desire terror, the sort of creeping dread? Do we want horror? Do we want to see the monster and have that reaction? Or do we like the
it just
physical?
depends on what you're looking
Yeah.
for. Because for me, I unlike King, I do like your typical slasher film.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, if it's just a horror film in that way, that's fine. But if I'm really looking for a solid piece of quote unquote horror, I want a little terror. I need a little terror, and then have that last third maybe be here comes the horror.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily need the revulsion, but
Yeah.
I need maybe a build up and then the explosion into horror.
I think terror is fun because it's cerebral. It gets you thinking.
yes.
Horror is what keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Thinking, that guy's in my closet.
Yeah.
That is what stays with me. The revulsion doesn't really stay with me until we're having a conversation like this one, where we're like, oh, that was gross.
Yeah.
But horror, I think horror is so hard to pull off. I mean, terror is too. I don't know. What do you guys think is the hardest one to pull off?
I think
I think
horror.
almost.
I think terror, though, is tougher.
I think
to pull
creating a persistent sense of unease is really hard.
I think horror is easy to pull off, but whether it's effective or not, or long last, you know what I mean? Like, like terror. I feel like anything could be really suspenseful. You know what I mean? Like all you have to do is like if I shot you looking at that door handle and there's a slow crawl on that door handle and we had some eerie music playing.
And
you just know, and like he says in the thing, you don't know what's behind the door. So for me, I really like terror, or just like the creeping unknown, like Under the Skin. Like I don't want to feel. I want to feel like really uneasy for the entire film. Whether or not they give me the big scare at the end is beside the point for me.
I know you've always loved. I think we did The Haunting, the Robert Wise.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I think it's all in your head. Or maybe it's not, but that's what I like.
Yeah, I mean, I look at The Descent, like I think that's a great movie to bring up. That to me is a movie that combines all three in ways that are like really awesome. I mean, but I can dig it in anyway. Like one of the reasons I really like oh God, who is that filmmaker? The guy who made Krisha and who made It Comes at Night. I'm forgetting his name now.
It's three names, right? It's
yeah.
First, middle, last.
Oh, Schultz, Trey Schultz, like Trey Edward Schultz. He's doing a really good job these days of crafting kind of, because even Krisha's not really a horror movie, but it's still one of the scariest movies I saw last year because he creates such an underlying sense of terror. Like it's that something like the way King describes terror is that you're witnessing an unmaking of something much larger, and that's what Krisha feels like, and that's what It Comes at Night feels like. They're movies that don't show the monster ever; it just exists and it hums underneath everything that's happening, and it's just a consistent, pervasive sense of dread.
We might need to, cut this down, but I'm kind of interested if you guys can think of an example that includes all three to great effect.
Oof.
And my answer would be Cronenberg's The Fly.
Yeah.
We start with this terror of teleportation, of the unknown, of what's going to go wrong. We don't know all this stuff about the flesh. And then we get the horror of his bodily transformation, which I would argue eventually gets into revulsion.
Yeah.
Pieces start falling off and he starts barfing on donuts.
Oh, fingernails. Anything to do with the fingernails. That's also really disturbing to me.
That's actually a good example. How about, I think there's actually an example here that King gives just for one of them, but Alien, right?
Yeah.
Because Alien, there's just a lot of build up in that with the terror element. And then, of course, the alien appears in horror, and then
it's gross,
that's
too.
Disgusting as well.
There's so much leftover terror. Like, we don't know what that statue was.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Well, now we do.
Well,
thanks,
no,
Ridley.
we don't.
Thanks, Ridley.
Mac, do you have an example?
Oh, God. I'm trying to think now, because I don't off the top of my head.
I jump in and just say I go with The Descent again. I think The Descent is a great mix of those things because The Descent gets pretty gross. And The Descent does some of the things that bother me, which is like snapping bones. Like I didn't touch on that, but I also struggle with snapping bones. Like not just like limbs getting pulled out of place, but just the sound of it really gets me.
She like bathes in that pool of blood and detritus.
Yeah, it's so gross. Ooh. And then like, what was that movie? There was just like any time that you build up that, even if it's not on camera, just the sense of hearing a bone break, like when you know it's going to come. Did you guys ever see like what was it called? It was like Bad Little Wolves or something. It was like a Danish movie that Quentin Tarantino was really high on, and it's about a guy who kidnaps this guy who is a suspected child molester and murderer, and he basically tortures him in his basement for a while, and that's kind of the whole movie. And it's really dark and it's really nasty and
Hard Candy too.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like that, but it's more artful. I do like Hard Candy though, but it's like
Goodnight Mommy.
Yeah, Goodnight Mommy is a tough watch too. And so but I think those are movies that also kind of really revel in revulsion in weird, interesting ways. But what do you got, Mac?
I was going to say, like, It Follows, but I can't think of anything like revulsing.
Well, that broken... the broken weird limb that's, like, torn off the body at the beginning is really gross.
And they flash right to it. It's a jump cut to this.
Yeah. It's like The Ring, like that moment when it cuts the girl in the closet. I still can't watch that. It's too much for me.
Yeah, The Ring. I think The Ring would be a good one, too, actually. Yeah.
Because the great cut in that is after it's happened, and then they talk about the scene, and then you see
and they catch you off guard too.
People talk about that's the first time that like that ever happened to them. Like that sequence in The Ring like movie audiences were not prepared for that cut.
No, they weren't, and I was not. That really truly frightened me when I first saw that.
I think the reason is because you think you're in a safe space, because in horror movies there's those scenes where it's like, okay, they're just talking, like this isn't a scary part. That was when I was a kid. I saw horror movies as almost like trials, like you get through the hard part and then you can relax for a little bit, and then because they're just going to talk about shit for a while, and then you get into the scary stuff, and then you got to gird your loins again. And so I love in The Ring that they get you in one of those scenes where
she's
you
like
think,
on the phone, right? She's like her face.
It's awful.
And then you see it.
Yeah.
And then it cuts, and there's like a huge sting to it, and that's like in a case where I think the sting is great.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh yeah,
All three. That's a good point, because there's a lot of terror.
Especially, you don't know what's going on in the beginning. You don't know, and then but it becomes like flesh and blood. Literally becomes flesh and blood. Like it gets out,
and it becomes horrifying.
And then all the dream sequences are disgusting. Well, I guess as the movies continue, the dream sequences get even
the terror
more.
is gone.
As Randall has mentioned with Freddy's Dead.
Well, also the Roach Motel is that 5?
Ooh, yeah.
That's
that's 4.
Oh, 4. That is
4,
literally one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen.
No one mentioned bugs. You mentioned spiders.
Yeah, I mean, bugs don't get me that much on film. They get me in real life. Like I'm terrified of them, but I'm also the one who's got to kill them.
All I could think of was like from Creepshow 2 with the cockroaches.
Oh, I thought that was first Creepshow.
Oh, that is Creepshow? Oh, yeah.
Creepshow. Not Creepshow.
Sorry, I put the wrong
heavy accent on the show.
Put the wrong inflection on there.
Creepshow.
Well,
that was my fault.
We've been touching on this, but I think it would be kind of fun to talk about the way King looks at artful horror versus B movie / and then I kind of want to fold in, he has such a disdain for what he describes as exploitation movies. And I think that's because he was writing this sort of at the height of these low budget exploitation movies. And it also touches on another idea, which is interesting, which King kind of says that there's so many bad horror movies because horror, like filmmakers who just want to start out and they don't have a lot of money, they go and they make a horror movie because they feel like they can get eyes on it and it's an easy thing to pump out for no money. I want to talk about that a little bit more later, but I think King says the reason there's so many bad ones and so many like exploitation kind of horror movies is because it's by people who don't really care about the format or horror as an art form, and they just make these, how cruel can we be? How much violence can we inflict? And, how can we do these things? So he clearly has a really strong disdain for exploitation, and he kind of values, but let's talk about like horror's art a little bit. He kind of talks about horror movies that have a strong social message or have a strong political message or have a strong, emotional kind of thing going on. So like, do you guys agree that that there can be sort of a strong line drawn? Do you think that there is such a thing as quote unquote important horror?
I don't know about important, but I think you can definitely draw the line between what he describes as an artful horror film and a B picture. But what's funny now, at least to me, I'm not sure about the rest of you, when I think of a quote unquote like a B movie, I'm not thinking of it the way he's describing it.
Right, because the format's totally changed.
The format's, even the definition alone is just different. I mean, he defines something like, I've got examples of Night of the Living Dead and Psycho, Hitchcock's Psycho, as B pictures. But it's only because there's not some strong political point that's trying to be made. But for me, when I think of a B movie, I think about the old like Roger Corman movies or straight to video movies that are really cheap and almost poorly done in a way. I don't think of it as a positive really at all.
Yeah,
and even he talks about finding the gems in the depths of the porta potty, right? Like you got to watch a ton of them, and then you'll find he mentions the beach party one where like, oh, there is like in so many, intentional or not, usually not intentional allegory there.
Yeah.
There's a great quote there, if I agree, that Mel's talking about. He says, the true horror film aficionado is more like a prospector with his panning equipment or his wash wheel, spending long periods going patiently through common dirt, looking for the bright blink of gold dust or possibly even a small nugget or two. They're only looking for a living wage, something to keep him going yet a while longer. And that's true, because I'll watch 1,000 garbage horror movies looking for that one that really sticks out because it's just so tough to make it.
Yeah, and this is a good quote that I really like. Along those same lines, he says, "It is perhaps too easy to become enamored of bad films as camp. as the great success of the Rocky Horror Picture Show may point to nothing so much as the degeneration of the average moviegoer's critical capacity. It might be well to go back to the basics and remember that the difference between bad movies and good, or between bad art and non-art, and good or great art, is talent and the inventive utilization of that talent. But I think that that's it's such a subjective sort of thing. Like, I look at Rocky Horror and I see a lot of talent. I love that movie.
Yeah, I do take umbrage with this comic because I think that, I mean, I know we're all supposed to have a fun time at Rocky Horror Picture Show, but I actually do think there are some amazing songs in that movie. And there's an iconic performance or two in that movie, too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. But of course, we've had a lot of distance.
Exactly.
He only had a few years distance. He only had maybe 6 or 7 years.
He thinks Wes Craven has no talent, as we've mentioned.
But at the time, he only done 3 crap movies.
Well, he says,
Hills Have Eyes.
He says the worst movie sends its own message, which is simply to stay away from other movies done by these people. If you have seen one film by Wes Craven, for instance, it is safe enough, I think, to skip the others. And that's such
Little did he know.
But I think that you're right, Justin, in pointing out how the landscape has changed so much. I mean, I think home video really changed things in terms of the proliferation of bad movies. I mean, there's a reason that people collect VHS tapes because more content was put out on VHS tapes than any other medium. Content that is not going to manifest on DVD, Blu-ray, or in theaters ever again. There's people that are devoted to bringing movies back from the dead that were only on VHS and usually very low budget. Like, I look at, and this is where I think, his idea of horror, like bad movies is camp and not to fetishize that too much, is very interesting to me because we live in a culture that worships The Room or a culture that worships Birdemic. I mean, these are movies that are genuinely horribly bad, and he is basically saying, it's fun to watch them once, but don't fetishize them this way,
Yeah, see, that's where we disagree.
Yeah, that's where I disagree because I think that there's a lot of, but the thing is, there's
a lot of joy, and I think with those instances, especially because, I mean, you can watch The Room with a couple people at home, but I think the full experience of The Room or even Rocky Horror Picture Show is to see it with hundreds of other people. Yeah. It's a community. That's a positive sense of community to me.
I think I don't think
there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, and I agree with you guys, but I think he might be I think he's trying to say that as to avoid people replicating this stuff.
Sure.
Had he known that Rocky Horror was pretty much its own thing, there really hasn't been anything that's been that successful cult-wise
really,
that.
50 years. That's a good point.
You know what I mean? And so, I get what he's saying. If people had just started coming out with Rocky Horror movies every day, or every year, it would get old and it wouldn't be very good.
Well, I think people tried to make them, but they weren't good, and we've forgotten about them. Yeah. It's like the Rocky Horror sequel, like Shock Treatment. It's not very good, and that's why it didn't rise out. I think the thing, he kind of classifies Rocky Horror as a movie that is good one-off, but it doesn't have a lot of talent. But I think what the pervading success of that movie to this day shows that there was a lot of talent because people tried to make movies like it and failed.
And even
that movie
goes back to Randy, you know more about this than I do, but when Tommy Wiseau, who did The Room, when they approached him to make another follow-up for, was it Adult Swim or something like that?
Yeah, The Neighbors.
And it just didn't.
It's awful. It's unwatchable.
Yeah, but it's not fun because you can't. It's an accidental genius in a way.
Yeah.
And there's a different kind of indefensible that he talks about too, though, right? Which is The Last House on the Left indefensible, which is just violence for violence's sake. And now we've gone a lot farther with that. Now we have a Serbian film.
Yeah, or a Serbian film, but the thing is, there's people that love those movies.
I know. Well, we were just talking about The Wizard of Gore. And that is just literally a magic show where they hack into a woman for 80 minutes.
That's very true.
I saw that.
You saw that with the creator himself, was there?
Yeah, Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Yeah. Well, when I was in when I was in high school, I worked at Eddie Bauer in the mall, and it was pure revulsion. And but I worked with this. It was really interesting. That was at a time in my life where I couldn't watch gory horror movies. But I worked with a guy named Brian, and Brian was this dweeb, he was a total nerd. But I remember one day he heard me talking about
like a bully.
I know, right? I'm like a
you're
bully.
Fully, you're
You're working at Eddie Bauer.
Oh, hey Brian, what's up, bro?
But no, it was I think the thing is when I call people dweebs and nerds, it's not a mean thing. It's just kind of it's literally the best way to describe them. He was the kind of kid that you thought was into magic cards. I was into magic cards too. I'm not judging that, but it's you look at him and you're like, okay, that guy's into that.
No, don't worry about it.
One day,
Brian.
one day I was at work and he heard me talking about like Quentin Tarantino because I love Quentin Tarantino, and he kind of looks at me and he kind of, because I was new, and he goes, "Huh, you like movies?" And I was like, "Yeah, I like movies." He goes, "What kind of movies do you like?" And I remember I was really cocky. I was like, "Good ones." He's like, and then he goes, "Do you like horror movies?" And I go, "Actually, I don't watch a lot of horror." And then I over the course of getting to know him, I found out that this guy was like not just into horror, he was into Herschel Gordon Lewis horror, and he was into the darkest, nastiest, most violent shit you could find. And he told me about this movie, and I'm sure some people out there have heard of it because I've seen people talk about it online. It is a thing. There was like a series of movies made just called Violent Shit, and like he just described it to me as like a guy walking through the woods just killing people for 20 minutes at a time and then going to the next one. And I remember him telling me about that, and it fascinated me in such a bizarre way. It was never something I wanted to watch, and I never have watched them. But there is that community of people who,
would purchase a snuff film.
Yeah.
if it presented itself.
I know, and that's the thing is,
Who
like,
have murdered somebody.
I know, right? And like
murderers is what we call that community.
And like Brian was such like a nice, chill dude, but then when you got him talking about that kind of stuff, it was like, oh my God. Like, but the thing is, I always egged him on. I was like, tell me about these movies because I'm never going to watch them, and I can't believe they exist.
And it's interesting because I don't know, like, what do we say that those movies are? Because I don't, because like,
I think exploitation probably,
right? Because King says, and I quote on page 211 of the Gallery Books edition, I think it was. It says basically, because in the final scene, the horror movie is the celebration of those who feel they can examine death because it does not yet live in their own hearts. Whereas I feel like movies like that, it's just like they're like really into that, like. I don't think they're just examining it. Like, no, they're just these people are sick. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm like waiting for the horror movie to happen where like someone jumps in here and already hears all about how everybody's worst fear, and then just slowly makes all those things come true.
Mac is to exploitation films what John Lithgow was to Footloose.
I've had my limbs stitched everywhere. Yeah, Randall's covered in shit. Justin just has a pickle on his face.
Oh God. Oh. And then I have to watch it all because I got something jammed through my kneecap into the wall.
We're stuck here.
But it's like I just find that and you notice how we're talking more about like bad movies than like art. It's like, and I find that interesting, and I think that there is sort of a captivation that happens when it comes to these kind of movies because I think that there is a catharsis too in the sense of approaching something that is really violent or really unsettling and really weird, but then the ability to laugh it off later because it is so bad.
We should talk about that. He talks about that, like, I don't know what he calls it, that like that coming back to yourself, a reassurance that everything is okay.
Yeah.
It is cathartic to watch a film. That's one of the benefits we get out of it. And I just have to say that's not why I go to watch horror. Like, I go to fuck everything up.
Yeah.
I go to disturb my worldview and keep it disturbed.
Yeah.
But maybe it's so subconscious I don't realize that I am benefiting from this sort of...
I think for me, though, it's kind of like that. But for me, it's more of a challenge, especially because I've seen so much and I've read a lot. I'm like, how is this person going to scare me?
Yeah.
I know this is not real. How is this person going to scare me, especially scare me for 90 minutes?
Yeah.
Which is the true test of a good film, of a good horror film.
Yeah, and like what scares us is also different. Like, I'd say two of the most scared instances I've had watching movies over the last several years were from films from the same director, Oz Perkins, who's actually Anthony Perkins' son. And he directed a movie called The Black Coat's Daughter, and he directed a movie called I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, which is on Netflix. Actually, I think Black Coat's is on Amazon Prime. Those are movies that I would classify as pure terror. Like, you never really see the monster in either of them, and both of them exist, for 90 minutes on sort of a very heavy sense of dread and a very heavy sense of portent and doom. But the thing is, like, Justin and I saw that together, and you and Mike were not fans of that movie.
I was not a fan of that, no.
Yeah, and like, so why would you say that it didn't work for you?
I think for me, I like I talked about earlier, what I usually do love is the build-up, is the terror aspect of a really solid horror film, and then the horror or the reveal at the very end. But for me, while the terror was there, the build-up was not earned.
Sure, yeah.
That's where I came from.
Yeah, and I get that. But I think at the same time, we're always bringing our own shit into these movies and the stuff that scares us. Like, I remember watching The Exorcist with my ex, and we were both really, really Christian at the time, like deeply so. And when we watched The Exorcist, I was scared of it because I grew up being scared of that movie. And my ex just kind of looked at me and she's like, well, this doesn't scare me at all because, I'm saved and I'm good with Christ, and I know that I can banish demons by just speaking the name of Christ. And that to me was really interesting.
She said, we probably shouldn't see each other.
Then you dumped her, right?
No, then I was like, no, I'm not scared by it either. I'm a good Christian.
Yeah.
But it was, I think that was that was such an interesting viewpoint to me, because I'm like, how could you not be scared by The Exorcist? It's so scary. But her own beliefs were basically like, no, this isn't scary to me. And
Yeah, and I think that's why like terror is the big thing for me, is because like you said, you bringing what it's like Luke Skywalker, and Yoda. You go into that cave and you bring in what you bring in is what you're gonna get. And I think that. Going into these horror movies, I like The Exorcist. Like, I think I was probably I was searching my religious beliefs at the time when I saw that, and I was terrified by that movie. And it's just because at the small thought that could actually be real, if I truly believed in this kind of thing, in this higher power, or whatever. I don't know. It just really, really creeped me out. And I think, in some sense, I do go to horror movies as like a cathartic experience, like what King was saying. Like I don't lead a scary life, so I actually like being scared. I like putting myself through that, because it's not something I get to experience all the time. And I really enjoy that, and I think that I, for one, do agree with King on that point, but that's not not everybody does that. He even says like the thing about like Lennon and McCartney, like all you need is love, but as long as you keep the gators fed. And part of me is like I can have all these other things and everything, but every once in a while I need to feed the beast. I need to like get that feeling and watch that's something I shouldn't watch. And
that sounds like what Mel's saying to a degree, because it's like I need to go fuck myself up a little bit,
right?
Yeah.
But like she was saying,
just to feel
maybe
something.
unconsciously,
but feel anything.
But on the flip side of that coin, I think unconsciously, what you're feeding that so that you don't have to, so that you can kind of dispel that.
But we
feeling.
know it's a safe environment. We're going to a safe room where we get to experience this adrenaline rush.
Yeah,
and that's why I love the comparison to roller coasters, and it makes sense to me when people say, I can't watch horror films. It's almost physically painful or just so unsettled. Like, I hate them. Like, I don't say like, oh, you nerd, you sissy, like, because I know people who don't want to ride roller coasters, and I used to be one of them. And I remember how physically unsettling and bad it was. And I think that this is just a taste call, a thing that we like, that we've been acclimated to, that we like this adrenaline rush, and some people really don't. They don't like being scared.
And the thing is, though, don't we all revel, though? We want to put them on the roller coaster, because you just said I didn't used to like roller coasters.
Only if they consent initially. Yeah.
But that's the thing is like I used to hate roller coasters too, and then I kind of went down the biggest, scariest one, and then I wasn't scared of them anymore, and now I enjoy it. And I was the same way with horror in a lot of ways, and I think that's sort of the fun place that I'm in with my wife, is trying to find the right ways
just bribing. It was all bribery for me. It was my dad, I'll buy you a t-shirt if you go on the roller coaster.
I think you just have to try everything once.
Well,
except for heroin. You probably
after that
heroin.
Promise of ice cream, I don't think I'd ever do anything for them ever again.
Have you been able to eat ice cream since then?
Yeah, no, but you know what I can't do is I can't eat anything that's maraschino cherry flavored, because that's the flavor of the gas. The gas that they gave me.
Ooh, wow.
And
That's interesting. I hate mint, because I hate when dentists clean your teeth and they have the mint flavored shit on it.
I still love it.
I hate it.
Yeah, it feels so clean.
I love the clean feeling. I just hate the sensation of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think all that's really interesting, especially just because, with my wife, I'm always trying to show her the right balance between, because she loves horror that she can classify as art. Like, that helps her. Like, she saw Goodnight Mommy and actually really liked it, even though that is a brutally violent film, because she saw more meaning in it that transcended violence for violence's sake. And the funny thing was, like, I almost didn't. Like, she liked that movie more than me.
Well, that's a different example for me, why I didn't like that film, but for different reasons than The Black Coat's Daughter. Because for me, well, first of all, I'm not going to spoil anything. The reveal was so obvious to me, and I know that maybe that's not supposed to be the main point of the film, but that took me out of it in terms of the terror of it all.
Yeah. Good Night Mommy?
And Good Night Mommy,
okay.
yeah. And the horror was there pretty much for at least half of the film, I would say, right? Probably half of the film is pretty, what you see is pretty horrifying, right? But it didn't work for me ultimately.
Sure.
There you go.
Would you...
Sorry. Are we delving into it all, the responsibility of the horror creator?
I think that's a good thing.
How immoral is it to be putting this stuff out there?
I think that's a great question.
Let's do that.
So I would say, I don't know. I mean, and that's the thing is, when King talks about exploitation in this book, it sounds like he's disappointed. He's like, I'm not mad at you. I'm disappointed in you because you're putting this stuff out there. And I think he finds it really reprehensible. And I think that, those questions get raised when, people who do violent things in real life are known to watch violent movies, or play violent video games or whatever. And I think that question of responsibility, is really intense. I mean, I've not watched a Serbian film, that movie, but I like to read about it because I think that the thing is, I know the problem with that movie is it's reprehensible in its creation, but also in its execution, and that it's also just not a great movie. I've heard that, but also at the same time, I think that is a space in which there is very potent horror there that nobody else has touched on. The question is like, how I couldn't answer that question, like how responsible or irresponsible are you being by making it?
Well, and he addresses this in the book, but I don't know if it would be any different. Like, or also where these people there's clearly something off, that do these things in real life. And though they might say, oh, well, I did this because I watched, Psycho, or I watched Halloween,
or Red Rage,
or whatever it is. Like, I feel like these people still would have done something had they not seen that, or they just wouldn't have been able to pinpoint or just be like, oh, yeah, well, I saw it in this movie. Because a lot of the times it's not anything that they actually saw. It's just like they just kind of reference that movie or whatever it is. Yeah.
And that's what he says in
But it's
the
like,
book.
and it's like violence in video games or violence on anything. We brought the hammer down for a long time, and there was never anything really violent on TV, on like cable and stuff like that. Now, you have Walking Dead and all this stuff on I don't think that really makes a difference. I think what really makes a difference is parenting and teaching our kids.
All right.
But seriously, I don't think that it really has a huge effect because, otherwise this would be happening all the time. But really, it's just like one-off random people. And there's so many people in this world. I just don't think it has that much of an effect.
What do you think,
I get very defensive when it comes to art, especially the artist's responsibility, whether it's just about, are you offending somebody or are you not offending somebody? And my view is just, you've got to let the artist do what the artist wants to do. I mean, and I can never imagine blaming somebody. I don't like Marilyn Manson at all, but he got a lot of shit during the Columbine massacre.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't blame Marilyn Manson at all for what happened at that school. And, so for me, the filmmaker's going to do what the filmmaker's going to do, and there are sick people out there, and if don't get me wrong, it's complicated, obviously. We all have different views on it, but my thing is let the artist do what the artist is going to do.
Well, there's probably instances where, some crazy person killed a bunch of people, and they're like, well, why'd you do this? And it's like, oh, well, they didn't know what the Care Bear stare was.
That's true.
Crazy
people.
But we're not citing that because that's just crazy, But I also just wanted to mention because of the Care Bears, he did say early on in the book he wrote, the American Idol folks can have all the Care Bears they want. I like my fear bears, and that's
God.
That's a Dan.
I didn't even rhyme.
That one's for you, Dan.
I do have a question for Mel, actually, because Mel, you've written some
Sure.
horror stories and whatnot. Are you ever worried about, quote unquote, the wrong person reading this, or are you just writing what you want to write?
That worry crops up now for me more in terms of a lot of it is concerned with being misogynist, honestly. The political climate has led me away from kind of is this too gory? Is this too much? And more towards, is this going to be read the wrong way so that someone thinks I believe something I don't? So not so much, but that's also because, I don't go into graphic detail as much. I like body horror a lot, but it's definitely not I don't know, it's not like cannibal Holocaust pipes going through people.
Through porta potties. People.
But I think I agree with Justin. I really like how King addresses this in the book. I think he kind of takes it really head on. He puts up actual news items and people referencing horror films and saying, I did it because of this. And he says, you know what, we can't really take that at face value because they would have done it anyway, like you said, Mac.
Yeah.
And I really like he talks about the triple werewolf at the end of the book, which it gets a little convoluted. But I think my understanding is the first is the monster of the book. The second is he uses the phrase the capering nihilist who doesn't care, who is an agent of chaos and could care less if you make a snuff film after seeing this movie. Mm-hmm. But the third and the final phase of the werewolf and the true phase is the truth teller, or the human being guided by telling a moral truth. And he talks about how people just say, you know what, you could like it or dislike it or do whatever you want after being influenced by it, but I observed and I told the story, and that's what I did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would say like it's not like these horror. It's not just like horror scene after scene after scene after scene. Usually, these books or movies have some kind of underlying message or moral theme to it. You know what I mean? Like, well, don't do this, otherwise this is going to happen. You know, they're all bedtime stories.
He talks about them being at their core reactionary, which is so interesting to me.
So it's like if you miss that, that's on you. You know, I mean, but so you can't really get on them for putting it out there.
At the same time, though, there is something really thrilling about watching something where you feel like what you're watching is dangerous in its own way. And like, I think about, I know this maybe not the best example. It's like The House of a Thousand Corpses, right? When I first saw it, I loved it because I was like, I was young, I was in college, and I was like, learning how to view films from, various lenses. And so when they dress up that girl as the bunny at the end, and then Sherry Moon Zombie chases her down and then just catches her and kills her, I was like, oh my God, like in this movie, the main characters like are actually the killers and the heroes are just there as animals to be slaughtered. And like, I thought I was so smart by getting that very
is gone on to make great films.
Well, yes, but it's very interesting to me. I remember feeling very thrilled by that, just in the sense I was like, I don't see movies like this that feel really nasty and really dangerous and really crazy. Like, I don't need a moral at the end of every movie. But at the same time, there does need to be that sense of responsibility. And I think that's where it gets complicated. A lot of the horror movies I really love these days are the ones that feel like they're refusing. The thing is, they're refusing to give me like a moral out. But at the same time, we'll always find one. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We'll always find our own meaning within anything that we watch. I mean, look at Eli Roth, like with Hostel. Like he made like a really nasty, bloody, mean movie, but then everybody read it as post 9/11 anxiety, and the movie kind of got elevated by public opinion. People, there was a lot of pearl clutching at that movie, but at the same time, I think people took that movie and took Eli Roth a little more seriously because they were reading this fear of the foreigner, like this sense of, that he was capturing sort of what America was going through this extreme violent exploitation movie.
I mean, that takes us all the way back to what we were talking about when we were talking about Jack Finney, for instance, and people are reading into Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah. But once again, Jack Finney was like, no, that's not what it means. I'm sure Eli Roth was probably, Eli Roth was probably like, yeah, that's exactly what I meant by that. Of course I did.
Eli Roth
he was like, yes, I'm a genius.
100% down with that.
We'll have a whole other my love for Eli Roth.
Well, I want to circle back to a comment I made earlier. The idea that when King wrote this book, young filmmakers were making horror movies because it was the easiest route into the industry. Do we think that that's still the case?
I think because horror has become such a huge industry unto itself now than it was in the 70s, I think you're seeing a lot of people making these small independent films on their own for little to no money, and then they get called up to do a bigger film. For instance, Lights Out director David Sandberg. David Sandberg. There you go. Perfect example. He got called up to do Lights Out. He's doing Annabelle Creation. And you look at somebody like the Adam Weingarts of the world, who are making their own little movies with their friends like You're Next. They got I didn't like Blair Witch, but that's an example of that.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting is I wouldn't even say that like genre is the go-to for a lot of young directors because now that we can film things with our iPhones and stuff like that, I think a lot of people are very much just kind of like, well, let me write a 20-something ennui kind of story about a bunch of people meeting to get like my own version of The Big Chill or whatever, because I'm seeing so many of those pop up in sort of the indie sphere, because I think for a lot of people that's such an easy movie to make, because you can, you don't need the effects and everything, you don't need all that stuff, and it's, there's always going to be a market for like white ennui, like in Hollywood.
A lot of that comes
days.
down to like the mumblecore movement a couple years ago, and everybody's like, I can make a movie now.
Sure, and there's no tolerance for bad special effects now too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Zero
such a great way to
tolerance.
put it. Yeah.
It's just all like slice of life, like, 5 friends hanging out at a party, and anybody could do that.
We
That's
could
so
film this
easy
right now.
Yeah, and there's no sense of,
And we are cut. Thanks, everybody.
but there's like no sense of risk. Like you're so right, Mel. Like this, I think that was what I was trying to articulate, is that sense of, back in the day you could get away with bad special effects because there wasn't CGI or whatever, and the handmade quality of it could be charming. And I think in some ways it still is if you do the handmade quality, but most people don't have access to the, they don't want to put the effort into that, and they don't want to, or they have no access to the CGI that kind of, could really elevate it, or, usually just make it look shitty like most CGI does. But I think that now that there's such a market for like, such existential ennui kind of shit, like drama or even comedy, just like mumblecore. Like mumblecore is a really good example too of just like that seems to have changed the way that people approach indie filmmaking these days. And I thought that was a really striking distinction, because I think when horror comes out now, I mean, it's rare to me that I see a horror movie nowadays, even if it's not good, that looks really bad. I mean, of course, I'm not watching the dregs on Amazon or whatever, like, the stuff that is populating the lowest tier there, which, or you go on Hulu, there's so many like weird knockoff, like, some like weird riff on like, or offshoot of The Last Exorcism or something that's on there.
Well, I think it goes back to the whole iPhone thing. I mean, you can make a movie with your phone now. Tangerine's not a horror film, but there you go. Tangerine was filmed on an iPhone,
and it's a great movie,
and it looks great.
Wasn't
too.
Paranormal Activity like really low budget?
Oh,
and it kind of blew up, and that might be the equivalent of like, they
handheld.
They went there,
but even then, I think like the thing there is they didn't try to do well. They had like their own special effects. They weren't like CGI kind of things. But I think the reason that movie stood out was because it was able to do something that even big budget filmmakers were like, "How did you film some of that stuff?" Even though it was so indie and they had no money, which is really neat. I don't know. I thought that was just an interesting question to bring up.
Yeah, I think. I mean, if we want to keep talking about modern horror, I think a lot of people are saying that horror is going through a second, third, fourth, fifth renaissance right now.
Yeah.
Well, there's this expression, like the post-horror expression gets brought up a lot now with something like It Comes at Night, and that whole definition, that whole new subgenre that's happening. So.
I've not heard that phrase, post-horror.
I don't know how I like it.
I don't think I like it.
I don't know how I feel about it.
I mean, post-horror signifies a certain level of self-awareness, right? And I mean, I guess I could see that more in a movie like You're Next, because that movie was kind of knowingly winking at a lot of things. Right. But at the same time, I just don't like it because I don't want to I don't want to.
What's the only enter into academia with it?
Yeah, I was trying to say like academicize or something, but then I was like, that's not a word. And then, but
yeah, doesn't want to make it college smart,
but like go all academia with it. I think that I mean, a movie like It Comes at Night to me is a movie that is really getting, I mean, that's actually, I don't know where people are getting post-horror from that, because that's a movie that to me is just tapping into really basic universal fears. There's nothing really self-aware about it. There's nothing really experimental about it. It's just a movie that is, really trying to capture what a nightmare feels like on screen.
When they say post-horror, they probably just mean slower than a slasher.
I know, right?
Exactly. This isn't Boogeyman 2.
Anytime anyone hears slow burn, they're like, oh, boring then.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, yes, please, more.
So let's touch on, King talked about horror on television back in, like, as it stood in 1981. What did you guys pull from his discussion of that part, and how do we see horror manifesting on TV today?
Well, I think of all the chapters in this book, this might be the most dated.
Yeah.
Because obviously in the 70s, hell, through the next couple of decades, really until maybe The Sopranos came around, TV was frowned upon. TV was the lesser medium compared to films. And he says something here. He writes, TV rarely produces the sublime, and series TV has never produced it. So we're so used and spoiled to the idea of peak television and prestige TV. Yes. So obviously back then that was not really a thing. You were getting like a lot of Marcus Welby shows and Emergency and that element.
Well, then Dark Shadows, obviously.
But then he starts talking about the horror aspects of it all, and The Outer Limits and The Twilight Zone, which I feel he throws some unfair shade towards.
He is so mean to the Twilight Zone.
I love that show. I think it's smart as hell. I still think it. Some of it. But I still think, for the most part, though, just thinking about the fact that was made, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And what holds up is still pretty remarkable compared to what else was coming out around that time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I love Twilight Zone, but I don't think I've seen enough of The Outer Limits, because he really puts The Outer Limits on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And although I will say one of my favorite Outer Limits episodes, I thought, was a Twilight Zone episode for a long, long time.
To Serve Man?
No.
Well, that's actually Twilight Zone
episode.
Yeah.
No, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a robot that's accused of a crime, and at the end, as they're walking him out to go be executed, he basically saves this girl and pushes her out of the way of a car, and then is just totally obliterated by this car. And the man's just sitting there like, we were going to just sentence this robot to death. Yeah, I'm not doing it very much justice. It's a great,
It's a complex morality play.
It's a morality play.
No, it really struck me. But I will say that I thought it was interesting, though, because there's a lot of the same. I mean, yes, it's outdated, but even with they wanted to do, what was it, Night Gallery?
He talks about Night Gallery, which is a less successful follow-up to the Twilight Zone.
And I think they said something, and he wrote that I think it was Rod Serling said something about, I think ABC wanted to make a trip to the graveyard every week, and I feel like we do that today.
That was actually in reference
with
to ABC wanted to pick up the Twilight Zone,
right?
And he was like, "No, we don't." He wanted to make it more than just another basic horror program,
right? And I guess my thing with that, though, is like they just. There's no room for new ideas, and back then, they weren't interested in new ideas. They were just interested on milking whatever they had, And I still feel like that's how it is today. We can't come up with an original idea. I'm waiting for the next rendition of Twilight Zone to come out again, or whatever it is. Seriously though,
and they've done it. They've brought back the Twilight Zone and Outer Limits a couple times over the last 40 years.
Scariest show on TV right now, Twin Peaks.
Hey, and that's. Yeah, there you go.
There's some really scary original episodes of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah?
Some really good ones.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And
that
I think
scary, that are still scary. That scare me.
Absolutely.
Personally.
So when do you guys think that maybe TV started to shift in ways that King would approve of?
The horror landscape, or just in general?
I'd say horror landscape, because Dark Shadows was around.
I think,
but Dark Shadows is a soap opera.
Well, it's funny because the 80s. Something he was involved in a little bit was Tales from the Dark Side.
Yeah.
And that was an anthology series as well by George Romero and Rubinstein, who they both those guys worked with King on Creepshow.
Right.
And that definitely takes the Creepshow anthology.
And then Tales from the Crypt, obviously.
Tales from the Crypt, a comic book series he mentions a lot during this book, and he loved growing up as well, the EC comics.
And it's really funny in this because I could not get the show out of my head, but he's really just talking about the comics.
Oh, the show is extremely faithful to the comics.
But I think it's neat too how I think maybe I'm trying to think of maybe the first actual serial horror drama that King might have been into was Kingdom Lars von Trier's Kingdom Hospital.
Yeah.
It was a Danish series, I believe.
The Kingdom,
and then it was called The Kingdom, and then he adapted it. He was part of the reason that it came over stateside as Kingdom Hospital.
What's another really good, if we're going back in time, post Danse Macabre, but pre-now, which is everything.
Pre-now.
I never know when to stop. I never know when to stop talking. Yeah, the past, or as I like to call it, pre-now, pre-present. 90s, a great show, not an anthology show, but an actual series was called American Gothic.
Oh, I never watched that.
A CBS series with Gary Cole.
Yeah,
before Brady Bunch.
He was terrifying in that. Yeah.
And the
great sheriff of the town.
Why am I blanking on her name right now? She's winning every single Emmy these days.
It's a Maddie.
Sarah Paulson.
Yeah, Sarah Paulson.
A young teenage Sarah Paulson's in it.
Wow.
Lucas Haas. It's
Lucas Haas? Love Lucas.
No, not Lucas. Lucas Black. I'm sorry.
Oh, I prefer Haas.
But really good show. Really ahead of its time. It was very controversial at the time.
I have to think that King would have maybe is a fan of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
That's a good example.
Why are there no good anthology series on anymore?
Yeah.
0.0.
They tried to bring back Tales from the Crypt this year, but there's some copyright issues.
Okay.
Well, I'll say this: Room 104 on HBO.
Yeah, I was just about to
it's
say
not
that.
great. I reviewed 6 of the 12 episodes, and they play with all genres. But I'll say that actually the least successful of them are the horror ones.
And American Horror Story is I mean, I'm of the opinion that it's just Drek. I don't know about you guys.
I didn't bother with
No.
it. I just from people I trust, they don't think it's a very good show. They think it's kind of like it's horror for people that don't like horror. That's what I
Yeah,
hear.
that's a
Yeah.
good way to put it. It throws everything at the wall. I liked the first half of the first season. I hated the second half. I thought the second season was pretty strong, but it could have cut it has aliens for literally no reason. And then it's a show that it tries to shock you more than it does to scare you. And I think that's a problem with a lot of horror these days is they confuse sort of the jump scare or the revulsion in a lot of ways with actual scares.
It is exactly what you said. It throws everything at the wall. There's an episode in season 2 that I like, the only full episode I've watched where it includes aliens, a serial killer, people trying to possession.
Yep.
Someone who's deformed crawling out into a playground.
Yep.
Anne Frank or someone is in there.
It's
Nazis.
everything.
Yeah,
Yep.
and
It's
that,
everything.
that's my huge problem with the show. Like I went and I watched the first season, I think the third, and maybe some of the fourth. The first episode of these seasons it's at the end of it, you're like, wow, I just watched an entire season's worth of plots in one episode. How are we going to make the rest of this show interesting? And they just burn through it. It's like they're sitting in the writer's room and they're like, okay, like what's scary in a haunted house? Okay, this. Okay, that's episode 1. Okay,
Yeah,
what are we gonna?
exactly.
And it's like it's ridiculous because whoever they have coming up with these ideas, they're smart people. These are all very scary things, but they blow through them so fast. There's no character development. You don't care about anybody, and all this stuff's already happening. And you're just, it's a joke.
Yeah.
And
I'd
the
be
fact
very
that it's
curious,
on, it's
yeah.
just like this, I don't know, it just feels like this reality television kind of thing where people are just watching it because they just want to, and then the fact that they keep,
You want a good
the fact that
sense
they keep
of,
bringing the casts over.
Sure.
Like that's an interesting thing, but again, it kills. Like, give me unknowns. Give me people I can actually like attach. Like, oh, I don't know who you are. I actually think you're this person. Now I'm scared that something's going to happen to you because I don't know. But when it's always someone we know, it's just like it loses that scare factor because
Right.
I'm like, oh well, it's Chickless or Sarah Paulson. Yeah,
Wait,
exactly.
Chickless was in it?
Yeah,
I guess it was in the series.
Love the chick.
You got a real sense of how times have changed because of all the backlash that they got for American Horror Story Freak Show. They used real quote unquote freaks, which is a very loaded term now.
Right.
And I mean, Stephen King talks about
Freaks.
in this and the freak as monstrous. It's a very loaded landscape now. I think that's a good thing by and large.
But even in that season, which is the first season I actually watched, they make the freaks are not the monsters, the humans are. And there's there's a serial killer who's just this guy, he's just this yuppie boy who's just like nuts.
Right.
And
They exploit
but
them,
they exploit
right?
it to an
Totally.
extent. And I don't know. I think their hearts are in the right place, but I just think the execution is
I
awful.
wouldn't say that.
Ryan Murphy, he's really good at starting off really well with shows.
Yeah.
And then they just
I'd say the first several episodes of the first season of American Horror Story are really great. Like it sets it up well. It's creepy. It's fun. It's not perfect by any means,
bumbles
but
the ending, I guess.
the whole last part of this, it's like they ran out of ideas. So nowadays there's quite a bit of horror TV programming, and I think some of it falls into, I think kind of in the aughts was when there was they kind of discovered the horror soap opera again, an offshoot of Dark Shadows, but a little less cheesy and less anthology based. I mean, there was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, obviously, and then there was Supernatural, The Vampire Diaries. These are all shows that more or less trafficked in the soap opera aspects of horror.
Self-referential.
Yeah.
Like playing with it.
And I think it was born out of the popularity of Twilight and things like that. I mean, that obviously
Scream,
fueled a lot of it.
A lot of that was born out of Scream, too.
Oh, yeah.
And Scream 2, the film Scream 2.
I love Scream 2.
as well.
But then I think kind of once
the third one.
I think once quote unquote peak TV arrived, or prestige TV, we started to see some some other really interesting shows come out. I mean, we got shows like Hannibal, which is
Love it.
yeah,
Creme de la
Hannibal's-
creme of horror television
So
of this
good.
century.
Is it ever coming back?
Yeah, I've heard that it is.
I think so. They got the rights back, and now they're having discussions. Martha De Laurentiis, Dino's daughter, Martha De Laurentiis, and
Mad for Mads.
And
Whereas Giada's just slumming it on the Food Network.
Slumming it on the
True Blood.
I
Can we briefly give like a little?
Yeah,
of these?
I'll just go
why
through all
not?
these shows. Yeah.
True Blood. I actually enjoyed the first 2 seasons of that show.
Yeah.
And then the season 3 premiere, I thought, I'm good here.
That'll do.
That'll do, pig. That'll do.
It just got.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Maybe it was season 4. I said, nah. You know
It was
what?
season 4, and it just got
Maybe I watched the
very, very self-aware,
lot
and then it
hours.
just stopped caring about continuity or like
Plot.
like characters would just be one way in one episode. The next episode they'd be making decisions that they would not make. It was like all the writers were in a different room and they didn't communicate. And they just wrote episodes and then they put it all together.
But I think it was
can't-
kind of up. Oh, sorry, you go.
I can't watch any show where they're like, there's fairies, there's vampires, there's werewolves. There's what else? Is on
I
that
know,
show?
I know.
Like, I just can't. There's too many mythical races, and I'm
Sorry.
like, no one has seen these guys wandering around New Orleans ever.
I think I jumped the boat when they had were cougars or whatever.
Panthers.
Were panthers, yeah.
all right.
Oh,
That's kind of sick, though.
Yeah. But I
Had
think
it not
I
been
think
like
that
every
the
other plot under the sun. Like,
I think
all
that
right.
the show kind of embodied a little bit of the soap opera and the
definitely.
and the prestige, but also just in the sense that it it understood that its audience didn't really care about continuity as much. Because you watch a show like Supernatural or whatever, or even some of the seasons of Buffy, it's like there is a lack of consistency there sometimes when it comes to character, and sometimes that's just something that happened that was born out of production, or sometimes it's just we need somebody to show their tits this episode.
Yeah.
So, and that just kind of, I think, was a reality, especially on HBO, where they needed that sort of thing to happen.
blood and sex and
Although,
Yeah, although I love how Stephen King talks about the vampire as dead below the waist.
Yeah.
And that's so untrue now. Everything is very alive. below
blood's
the
going
waist.
just fine.
Yeah.
Blood's pumping all over the place.
has anybody here watched Bates Motel?
You know what? That's a show that a lot of people are down on. I watched the first 2 seasons of that show, and I actually enjoyed it for what it was. It definitely had its flaws. And then around season 3, I jumped ship. And then apparently, though, the last 2 seasons are supposed to be amazing.
That's what I heard.
But I can't see myself going back and watching 30 episodes of that show now,
I think I finished season 3 and then I was caught up or something, and then I just never watched the rest. But I did hear good things, and it's got a good cast.
It has a very devoted fan base that I follow some of them on Twitter, and they are very, very into it. Has anybody watched Penny Dreadful?
I
Yes.
watched.
Love it.
Yeah.
I
really
watched
liked
the
it.
whole thing. Very, very good show. This is a sad case, though, of showrunners discovering or learning that their show is going to get canceled before the season's over. So the last 3 episodes feel like it was a whole season unto itself.
a little more than that, probably too.
Maybe 4 or 5.
Four episodes,
Yeah.
maybe. And it's
that's-
like
it was a real disappointment
start-
because that's a great example of trying to return gothic horror,
Yeah.
genuine gothic horror to television.
Frankenstein's monster philosophizes.
Yeah, and it's just like the Mary
Yeah.
Shelley.
And I would
story,
still,
the
I would
actual
still
story.
absolutely recommend watching those first 2 seasons, even the 3rd season, because
You'll know when to stop.
It starts getting crazy.
You'll know.
And they just rush some storylines, and I'm not going to go into because I know you haven't seen it. But I would still
Green's
recommend
unbelievable on
it.
the
Ava
show.
Green, everyone's really good on the show.
It's a good.
Has anybody watched The Strain?
I watched
did.
quite a bit of The Strain, and then finally, I think it was around the Red Hook episode. So, which if you've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. And I checked out. It just got kind of dumb.
Yeah, I watched the first season of that, and then look, we can't say it enough. We're in the era of prestige television. We're in the era of peak television. I don't have the time anymore for The Strain. Sorry, FX.
Yeah, that's how it is these days. It's kind of like, can I make time for another show?
And I love Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
And it was hard. I really hung on to that show. I was really like an apologist to an extent. But yeah, I just had to jump
It's funny because I
ship.
think the series finale is on tonight, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
as
is
we
it
record
really?
this, but,
Ooh.
yeah.
Has anybody watched the Scream TV show?
I did watch most of the first season of that TV show.
I heard it was good.
You heard wrong.
Oh.
If you want to see, this is an example of there's too much TV and all the good actors are spread out too much because there's nobody good on this TV show. It's really rough. It's really, really rough. It's some of the worst young actors you'll ever see in your life.
Well, we're tearing down all of this stuff. But are there good horror shows out there like Hannibal?
Hannibal is one, and then I think
Penny
we had
Dreadful. We
Penny Dreadful. You guys
Right.
like?
I think, are people at home screaming The Walking Dead right now? Because
we're gonna get there.
Oh, okay, we're getting there.
taking our
All right,
time.
all right.
I want to talk about
That's an action
I want to
TV
talk about
show.
Stranger Things, the hit show.
There you go.
Oh,
See-
based on the Stephen King book Stranger Things.
That's like fun family horror.
Yeah.
And that's not. I'm not being dismissive at all. That's something. That's a good example of horror for the whole family.
And I'll say for that reason, I found myself bored every now and then because I felt like it was hitting the right nostalgia points for a past that never existed. But it was satisfying certain touchstones from my childhood in terms of horror, but I never found it scary, and I honestly struggled finding it super compelling. But at the same time, I'll say I really like the characters, I really like the cast, I like the archetypes they're working with, and I saw the trailer for the second season, and it looks awesome.
You know what I like about Stranger Things is that I think it brings a lot of people that don't like horror into the genre in a way that maybe now they'll be open to seeing a little bit more scary things, a little bit, something that they're not usually into watching, because I feel like what it does do is walk that line really well in terms of, it's well balanced. It's got a lot of comedy in it. It's got a lot of heart. But like there's a couple moments that are pretty, there are some pretty scary. Yeah, Tootsie. But there are some genuinely like, I was a little unnerved by some of the things, there's some scary things, Randall's not a baby like us.
Big boy Randall.
He's big boy Randall over here.
There's no shame in admitting you're scared of stuff. That's what we're looking for, right?
I don't get scared.
I hate people who say that.
Randall doesn't cry. Randall doesn't read horror. He doesn't like horror.
No. But
we all know those people, right? That they're like, yeah, like I go to see the most fucked up shit because nothing affects me anymore. And I'm like, well, then why are you going? I go to get affected.
I give them a medal and I say goodbye.
That's
and now we're gonna
here.
Now we're gonna talk about the best horror show on TV, and it's a little show I like to call The Walking Dead.
Are you being facetious?
Yes, I am, because I really. I'll say this. I'll talk about Walking Dead a little bit. I have given this show so many chances. I have watched it and watched it and watched it. I watched the first 2 seasons. Unwaveringly, and I was like continuously disappointed, but always really I like the pilot, I'll say that, but I was really committed to the idea of a serial zombie show. It sounded really exciting to me. I loved the potential of it, and I kept thinking it was gonna get good eventually. But the way that Walking Dead gets you is it always has good premieres and it always has good finales. What's in between almost always sucks.
Well, I'm curious because I feel like Mac, Randall, and I have talked about this show ad nauseum. I feel like I've watched the first season and a half 1,000 times.
Yes,
I feel like I've said that 1,000 times. Mel, what do you think about The Walking Dead?
I don't watch it. It doesn't interest me. I think it's an action series and not a horror series.
That's what I felt like.
I'll say this: if it's an action series that is very committed to the revulsion aspect of King's triptych.
But is it ever super original in that aspect? Or?
I would say like that's honestly. Because I watched the first 2 seasons, and then I dropped off because I got bored. And then I went back and I binged on the 3rd and 4th seasons. And how many are there now? Is it on the 7th season?
Well, they've got like these season 6 part 2, season 6 part 4.
Yeah, I don't even know anymore. All I know is that
like 1,000 episodes at this point.
I think I skipped either season 4 or 5. Like I just read
because I'm timelining.
Well, I asked my buddy Dan, Dan Caffrey,
episode 3 aired, and then there's a 6-month break.
Fellow loser Dan Caffrey has watched that show unwaveringly because he was reviewing it for a while for Comic Book Resources, and I asked him, I'm like, look, and he was like, hey man, the 5th, this is my Dan impression. He's like, hey man, like the 5th season is actually really good, and I was like, okay, so. Can I skip the 4th season because I didn't want to watch it? And he's like, yeah. I just read I read the Wikipedia entries for them, and then I watched the 5th season. I was actually kind of enjoying it, and then it got but again, it was like the first 2 episodes were great, and then it sucked, and then it ended strong, and I was like, should I keep watching? And he's like, but Dan is very forgiving. Dan loves, Dan can forgive shows for things that we can't, and he kept telling me to watch it, but he would say, he's like, it's not great, but watch it. And then I watched it, and I finally hit a point I was like, no, I fucking hate this show.
He was telling you the truth when he kept saying it's not great.
You really buried an own on Dan Caffrey.
Oh no, that's a nice voice.
You were like, he's more forgiving.
Well, he is. He would say that.
He would say that. Oh, Dan Caffrey, yeah.
Well, he's the one who he always ends up defending things because even if he doesn't like them, because he always hates things less than we hate things.
That comes to personal life too.
Yes, but I'll say that Walking Dead is a show that I've always loved the potential of it, and it's disappointed me time after time. I've always gone into it with an open mind, and I just get so frustrated because that show refuses to make Rick a villain, which is all they need to do to make that show good.
I was watching my boyfriend play The Last of Us the other day.
Oh, I
and
love
was
that
like,
game.
This is more interesting
Yes.
than every Walking Dead segment I've ever seen.
Well, you're
It's
not wrong.
I just don't care about
It's
it.
a better story.
And I agree with you. I stopped watching after the first season, and then my best friend Chris was telling me, you gotta watch it. The second season gets good." And so I went back and I watched it for another like 3 or 4 seasons. And Randall's right. There's like nuggets. There's like gems in there every blue moon.
Keeps you going.
But that's not enough. I shouldn't have to be waiting 5 episodes for something good to happen for me to keep watching a show. Like, that's not a good show.
You got to practice self-care, man. You got to get out of there.
But I agree. Like, there's a season where
It
Rick...
is a very like lopsided relationship in terms of who's getting what from
Yeah,
what.
and there's a season where Rick and some of the original members are kind of come across these people that they don't know what's going on really. They've been in this like isolated town, and they kind of come off as the villains. And it's probably the most interesting turn of that show. And it just doesn't go anywhere. It really doesn't. And then we're just worrying about all these other people that are experiencing these things for the first time and making all the same stupid mistakes. It's just repetitive. It's dumb.
It's like
I don't like
they
it.
need an end date for the series because that's what happened to Lost too. I mean, Lost like was spinning its wheels for a while, and then they gave him an end date, and they were like, okay, now we can move the story forward. And whether you liked where it went or not, it was always at least moving forward.
But don't worry, we got Fear the Walking Dead, which is literally now the same exact show and totally defeats the purpose of what that show was supposed to be originally. So
The great Kim Dickens wasting her career
oh
away.
man,
on
Kim,
Walking
Kim,
Dead.
what are you doing? What are you doing, Joni?
She's on something else now that I think is doing well. I can't remember. She's great though.
Zombies in general, I think they're on their way out or they're out.
I think
they
they're
had
on
their
their way
time in the
out.
sun,
Yeah.
and like now, what are we moving on to? I don't know.
What are we moving
Ghosts?
on to? Ghosts or monsters?
I feel like ghosts and
Well, like Stranger Things is
projections of inner demons.
Yeah.
We're going Babadook. We're going Crimson Peak.
Yeah, yeah.
We're-
or real
It
life,
follows,
or
yeah.
like
follows.
Mr. Mercedes, like real life horror, like real.
Well, true
like,
crime is
serial
really in
killers.
right now. Like true
Yeah,
crime.
if you do like
Yeah.
monstrous crime, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I think that like Mr. Mercedes to me is kind of true crime.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think that's really honestly what's in right now. But I think, ghosts are also in, and I also think monsters to a degree, like
Yeah.
Stranger Things, I think popularized sort of the beast again,
Sure.
Like
I feel
the
we're
non-specific monster.
Yeah.
going abstract.
Yeah.
Like in terms of supernatural horror.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more nameless in a way that I like.
Did anybody see the movie The Monster with Zoe Kazan?
No, you saw that. didn't
I
you?
reviewed it. I didn't love it, but I at least appreciated it to a degree because you want to talk about a movie that's pure horror. I mean, that's a movie because that has its own. It's called The Monster, and there is a very singular, weird, undefined monster at the center of it that you see a lot of, and that's sort of the most exciting part of the movie. The rest, it's got a good heart to it, and it's an interesting film, but ultimately it just kind of fell flat. But
Have you seen Monster-in-Law with Jane Fonda?
Well, that's the real monster. Mother-in-laws. Eh?
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
I would say we were talking about this is an anthology series, right? Channel Zero
I don't know that
on
one.
Sci-Fi.
Oh yeah, that's
is
that's
it
like
anthology?
That's like the creepypasta one.
I think it is, and I haven't seen it, but I've wanted to. So if there's anybody out there that's seen it, and if whether it's good or not, let us know.
Yeah, send us a message or post on our wall.
I think Dan liked it. I think Dan.
Oh,
Of course
no.
he did.
Dan,
Well,
Dan liked it.
Dan's like Stephen King. He loves
all
everything.
right.
We love
but
you,
no,
Dan.
there was a commercial I think where
miss
like
you,
this
Dan.
guy is sitting across the table from a creature that's just made full of it's just teeth. And I always thought that was a really cool image, and we talked about that. But yeah, I don't know if it's any good though. I'll have to check it out.
Very spooky. Any final thoughts on TV horror?
Love it.
Actually,
I want-
Please.
I'd say
want the anthology series to come back.
yeah.
Yes.
And in a big way. And I also want Hannibal to come back, and it's
Yeah.
happening because all the other horror is too tongue-in-cheek for me.
I think Campbell will be back within the next 18 months.
I also think the anthology series is going to start happening. I think that's because, I mean, I think even we've been seeing the season-long anthology, which is, like we saw with American Horror Story, but also the True
American
Crime
Crime
series,
Story,
American
yeah.
Crime Story, and then I think wasn't the one on network TV just American Crime? I've watched
Yeah,
it.
that's true. And then also Fargo, for instance, was
Yeah.
anthology based.
Yeah,
People thought
exactly.
Stranger Things might be an anthology.
It was initially meant to
seasonal,
be that
yeah.
way. Yeah.
But they said, we'll see what happens.
Well, really quickly, Stephen King talks about the first, film that he saw, that was what was The Creature from the Black
Yeah.
Lagoon, or like what was your guys' first like film that you saw that was horror, or that you can trace back to like your beginnings of like wanting to watch
Psycho.
Yeah.
How young were you when you saw Psycho?
I'll tell a quick story. Mac was there for this.
Oh God.
My parents were having a Christmas party, so they put me in my room with this little black and white TV, and they turn on the first channel. It's a black and white movie. So they say, okay, just sit here, and you guys just watch this. Don't come outside. It's an adult party, It's a Christmas party. So, okay, whatever. So I'm there. I'm about probably 4 or 5 at the time, or 7 or 8 at the time. My brothers are probably 4 or 5 at the time. And it's Psycho. It's a scene where Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh are having their first conversation in the den. And we sit there and we watch the whole movie.
Yeah.
And that's my first memory.
there you go.
And
What,
it
what
scarred
did
the
you
hell out of
think?
me.
It was
It
scary.
scared
Yeah.
the hell out of me.
Yeah.
I didn't know what we were watching.
Well, did you know when you during that first conversation? I feel like as adults we realize there's something off. It's very.
I wonder
unsettling.
because I was just kind of just watching it like, this looks strangely familiar. Like, just because the video
it's
box you would see of her scream, like, she looks familiar. What would she look like with wet hair? And
Well, seriously,
and
because
there
it's
you
like,
go.
like 10 minutes of conversation and then the shower sequence. So it's like,
We're just frozen in time.
So I don't remember that per se, but like, I don't think it was a movie, but just like watching things like, God, yeah, it probably was Psycho now I'm thinking about it, but just watching things like X-Files or even Are You Afraid of the Dark, like you were saying, like those things.
which didn't pull punches.
No, but it was
Sibo the Clown.
It was like, well, if my parents won't let me watch Tales from the Crypt, I'll watch Are You Afraid of the Dark. And it was like, but it still filled that void. It still made me want to investigate and look for more of these things. And again, having an older brother was great because
You're
he would
welcome.
bring these movies
Again.
home that was no way allowed to watch, and I would watch them.
How about you, Mel?
Well, my parents like to joke that I was watching Hellraiser in diapers, but I don't remember it. They both liked horror, and they would. I mean, when you're
They're, like,
when you're an
throwing it,
infant,
yeah.
they're like, she's not going to remember. The first horror movie that I remember seeing is Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Wow.
I don't remember being super scared by it. I think at the very beginning, there's a creepy bit where you don't see the creature, and he approaches this poor archaeologist assistant. He puts his hand, and you see this like blood against the rock wall, and that scared me a little bit. But that was my first memory of a horror film, and the first film that really got me, the first memory I have of feeling ooh, was the original The Fly.
Yeah.
Just the help me sequence has stuck with me for the rest of my life.
It's a price on the park
Oh
bench.
yeah, and again, I got to mention the great Vincent Price creepy classics. So that weird amalgamation of like clips and previews of horror films, classic horror films, most of them. Like I was a teenage werewolf and stuff like that. Like that was my first introduction to
Night
all
of the Living
those.
Dead.
And then I would be at the library every week getting Day of the Triffids and stuff like that.
Oh, and I will say real quick, Stephen King discusses Creature from the Black Lagoon as his first horror film. He remembers being very scared by it walling people into the lagoon, and he remembers just the creature being very scary. And as a woman, what you get watching that as your first horror film is like the monster is going to come kidnap me and take me into a grotto. It's a very different experience because that's all they're doing in those old films. They're just like kidnapping you.
They're killing the men and they're
for
kidnapping the women.
Purposes that no one on the film is ever going to voice, but it's rape. Like, so I feel like it's. I would like to read Danse Macabre written by a woman, and that's all I'm going to say.
Who would have like the little devil lettering coming out of their letter? I wonder who it would be.
My first encounter with horror was Thriller.
Oh yeah.
No lie.
Yeah, that might
The show?
No, the music video.
Randall's 60.
I watched those. My dad had all of them.
I wish those are the Boris Karloff stuff. But you're talking about the
Yeah,
Jackson.
my mom showed me Thriller because she loved it, and I was a little too young, and it scared the living shit out of me. And then the first movie, I don't remember how I came across it, but was Poltergeist. Poltergeist is, to this day, one of my favorite horror films.
That's
but
a steep learning curve.
I know. And like the meat, the steak that crawled and had maggots was bad enough, but then the man's face falling off pretty much scarred me for life. And I think that's why I couldn't watch horror for so long.
Before we go on, I will speak on Poltergeist 2. The old
Electric
man.
Boogaloo.
Here's the classic. Of course, we all know the old man.
Julian Beck.
Kane, the great Julian Beck, horrifying in that film. Well, I would see these trailers on TV, and he scared the hell out of me. I was only 5 or 6 at the time. So I'll never forget, I'm at the breakfast table,
and it comes on. I see it's like, you see him like walking on the yard. So I turn around and I tell my dad, all right, Dad, tell me when it's over. Tell me when it's over. So he says, all right, it's over. I turn around. He's right there on the screen. He said, you're all going to die. I looked up, my dad starts cracking up. Thinks it's the funniest thing. Scared the hell out of a little kid. Thanks, Dad, if you're listening.
That's so funny.
But wonderful.
How many of you got into horror because of your fathers?
Not me.
Not me.
My parents hated horror.
Yeah, they were not.
They still do.
I'm the only one. Never mind.
I'm
I thought
jealous.
it was going to be a cool reveal.
Well, no, Dan got into horror. Dan Caffrey got into
His
horror
dad.
because of his dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you guys have that in common.
There you
But no, my dad hates horror. He calls it blood and guts, and he doesn't like it. And I think he's always been a little squeamish about stuff like even like one thing my dad can't handle that has kind of transferred to me, mainly because he kind of. I watched him struggle watching it when we were young, was needles. My dad can't stand needles on screen. And so it doesn't
watch opera.
Yeah, I know, right? It doesn't bother me that much, but it does do a little twinge in me because I always remember my dad. This is funny. I remember watching the movie Mo Money with Damon Wayans.
Mo apostrophe money.
And there's a scene in that where a guy injects heroin or whatever. And I remember being really young. Yeah,
I thought that was a comedy.
it is, but it's like a crime comedy.
Oh.
It's like a dark comedy. And
Your head was bobbed.
I know I did a little bob. I don't know why, but I remember my dad being so grossed out by that, and I didn't even know what the guy was doing because I didn't really know what drugs were yet, and I shouldn't have been watching Mo Money. I think I thought it was boring,
You should watch Boomerang.
Boomerang. I love Boomerang.
Yeah, Boomerang's good.
Well, why don't we wrap this up? Justin actually compiled a list of how many 100 movies?
Yeah, here's the thing. Now we'll post this 100 quote unquote essential movies. Now these were movies that came out because, as we know in the book, King tackles horror movies from 1950 to 1980 of varying quality, and this list that we're going to post is the same. These are 100 movies I found. I looked through Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, and some other sites, Letterboxd, and tried to find a mixture of critically acclaimed or commercially successful or even just cult classics since Danse Macabre came out. Even looking on this, right away, I think, Child's Play is pretty famous, right? But that's not on this list, so forgive me. If you notice anything missing from the list, this is not our favorite list, all right? This is just a list of 100 movies that have made some dent in some way since 1980. But there's that great explanation. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, how do you want to approach this? Do we want to just talk about movies that stand out to us as examples of, King's sort of approaches to horror, or?
Well, I think a few of these we've already mentioned.
Yeah.
Looking down here, we talked about Goodnight Mommy. That's on this list. We talked about We talked about Nightmare on Elm Street. We've talked briefly about Hellraiser. How do you folks want to go about it?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we think that any movie on this list, or can we just think of any ways in which horror has drastically departed from King's views?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. I look at Evil Dead 2 as a really seminal horror film from the last 30 years, mainly because it combined humor and genuine horror and sort of slapstick in ways that I don't think many other films had really done before.
That's a good one, because I'm even looking back on... Has anybody here seen Roman Polanski's The Fearless Vampire Killers from the 60s? It's a failed attempt at that type of a comedy horror.
Yeah.
And whereas Evil Dead 2 is... Yeah, I love Evil Dead 2.
And I don't even think it's just comedy horror, because there definitely was that, before this. But I think Evil Dead 2 really resonates for a million reasons. And I think that's the, ingenuity of its special effects and also sort of the iconic performance from Bruce Campbell, who really steps it up from the first film. Because the first Evil Dead's great in its own way, but it's not iconic, The second movie is the one that really resonates because it's filled with so many memorable images, and it takes really, it takes revulsion and it takes horror, and it really turns them on their head a little bit by, he cuts off his hand and then it comes to life and chases him around. I mean, that is the way that is handled in that movie. To me, it's really rare to nail the tone, to nail the balance between horror and comedy and slapstick and all of these other sort of, things that are hard enough to achieve alone in a comedy or alone in a horror movie.
I would think there is a gap. This relates to what you just said. In King's collection here, he does not talk very much about foreign horror that's outside the realm of Godzilla monster movies and some European and some British stuff. But I think Hausu is an example that goes for slapstick. I don't know what year that was made, but
That might have actually, I think it was released in the States in the 80s, but that might have actually come out in the late 70s.
Well, I feel like it was probably, I think probably
It's on our list. It's on the list. But
The
It is on the
reason,
list, okay.
the reason why King, I think, didn't have those was because it probably didn't have access to them.
Oh.
I mean, they probably weren't on VHS tape
Sure.
or they weren't playing at the local cinemas. Whereas now we have access.
How would
to
you
it.
Japanese horror? How would you? We did talk about The Ring. But
Yeah.
I think we were talking about the American remake.
Yeah. And I'd say that I like a lot of Japanese horror, but I'd say The Ring, I prefer Ring to Ringu.
Sure.
But I'll say that, have you seen Pulse? The Japanese?
Cairo.
Yeah.
So good.
That is, to me, sort of the pinnacle of like the artistic horror film.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen that?
I have not.
It's beautiful. They made an American remake that is complete and utter
It's
garbage.
just not even related.
It's just called Pulse, and it's about
Somebody's got a pulse.
It's like evil internet.
Yeah, it's ghosts. It's
times.
ghosts coming out of your Ethernet.
But Pulse, I'd say, is probably, out of all the Japanese horror I've seen, is probably my favorite. It's a very rewarding horror movie.
Yeah.
It's really unsettling. I think it occupies sort of the terror aspect of King in ways that are very striking.
It's very socio-political.
Yes, very much so.
Well, that's the thing here, because speaking of the political, I mean, The Purge Anarchy is considered to be kind of a horror movie.
Yeah.
Now, do you think it's a horror movie only in name because The Purge, the original Purge, is more of a horror film?
I mean,
But I still think it works as a horror movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'd say
a new
that
way.
it's
In a
the
new
way it's filmed and it's the imagery and it's the brutality of it that really elevates it above, and the fact that it exists in an alternate universe. But I mean, I think if you really break it down, it's horror in the same way that Escape from New York is sort of like, And I'm not saying Escape from New York is funny, and it's also like more of an action movie than it is a horror movie.
Definitely.
But I think that there's elements of horror that can be read into it because of the alternate universe that is sort of dystopian and sort of freaky. And there is something unsettling about that. And so I think that Purge Anarchy, just the sense of you're looking at a world that's displaced in its own way and that is existing in a state of chaos, it kind of edges into horror in that regard, I'd say.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Mel.
Sorry, just I think related to the comedy too is we're just seeing so many things that play with tropes.
Yeah.
I mean, Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah. Cabin in the Woods, definitely.
Yeah,
That's not on here, but it is on here. It's under the.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it was
Scream. Also, like even
Fright Night.
Return of the Living Dead is very aware
Love the
of it
Fright
being
Night remake and the original.
a zombie movie. Return of the Living Dead.
Return of the Living Dead is actually a good example of it all. That's a straight up horror movie too. There
even
you go.
the second one, and they're just very, very aware that they are zombie movies, and they poke fun at it too.
I agree.
The Silence of the Lambs, I think, is a really seminal horror movie from these times.
I would agree.
Especially just because I think in terms of a movie that was able to be, like, a lot of people I know say that is the scariest movie they've ever seen. But at the same time, it functions as, really resonant drama.
Thriller.
And thriller. It encompasses a lot of things.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
If you look back at how King breaks it down between art horror and then B picture horror, even though Silence of the Lambs won Best Picture, wouldn't you consider that a B picture?
In terms of like how he was breaking it
In
down,
terms of how he was breaking it down.
like Psycho and
Yeah, yeah.
maybe psychological like thrillers. almost?
What are the real? There's not really. Do you think there's like real undertones to Silence of the
Oh
Lambs?
yeah, I mean Hannibal Lecter is a psychologist. It's all about probing your interior.
Well, I know that. I'm saying, but do you think there's anything deeper than that? Like, for instance, Dawn of the Dead is more about consumerism and that type of thing. The way he was defining it back in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, I think
That's what I'm saying. Like in terms of like the way he would define certain things is not how we necessarily read it today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just about darkness that lies within all of us and sort of the things that haunt us in a lot of ways. I mean, I think that's what that movie touches on. In terms of touching on a larger social or political issue, I don't know if it does really. I think it just functions as a great drama and a great horror movie and a great thriller.
It's got spills, chills.
It's got spills, chills, and
the
thrills.
taboo. I mean, there's eating
good
people.
Lord.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, the revulsion too. But I think Cabin in the Woods is actually, in terms of looking at a movie that is markedly different from anything that was around in King's time. I mean, I guess, I don't know, it's like the closest thing I can think of is like Frankenstein meets Dracula or whatever, because it's like throwing all these monsters and these archetypes into one movie and playing it for comedy, I think is sort of such a neat novel concept. I mean, however you feel about that movie. Like, I went into it knowing nothing about it, and I ended up leaving very satisfied because I had no clue it was going to go where it went.
Well, and there's a couple films on this list I'm looking at, and he talks about the anthology TV series back in like Thriller and Tales from the Crypt and Outer Limits and everything else. he doesn't really talk about the anthology films that were coming out in the 70s, especially the original Tales from the Crypt movies that came out, the Dr. Terror, House of Horrors with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee and all those people. But I feel like there was a little bit of a boom in the 80s and on where, like, for example, Creepshow.
Yeah.
That King was a part of.
Yeah.
That was a successful anthology film. And then years later, Trick or Treat.
Yeah, Trick or Treat to me is, and I felt like it was even sort of moving the anthology forward in the way all the narratives were sort of interconnected and not told in sort of a straight, bang, bang, bang kind of narrative. And honestly, I thought we would see more movies like that.
Yeah, hey, Ryan Murphy, that's how you do it.
I know, right?
Well, it's funny, that movie was in, like, release hell because it was shot and ready to go. And for one reason or the other, I think it took another year or so for it to actually come out, maybe even a couple years.
Yeah.
So I guess, people are still looking to see if there's an audience for that in theaters, and I don't know how there wouldn't be. You figured that there is, but I'm not the I don't run the show,
I think another interesting experiment that didn't really take off was Quentin Tarantino's Grindhouse double feature.
Death Proof is my favorite Tarantino film.
Yeah.
So it took off for me.
I know. Well, see, I love Planet Terror as well, or at least I did. I haven't seen it in many years. I love both of them.
I think it worked from, like, a critical standpoint, at least for me. But yeah,
it made no money.
It didn't make any money.
Yeah,
you're asking a lot. You're asking people to stick around a lot for
but
that.
That's
for strange films, to say the very least.
I mean, Machete happened.
Yeah,
because of it. Yeah.
See, I wish they had made Don't and Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
I like Machete.
No, I like Machete.
Now, Machete Kills. I think
Machete
I gave that.
is not very
I might
good.
give that an F on Sunday.
Machete's good, but I really wish. I still wish we could see Jason Isaacs and Don't.
Don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
Well, I think that it's interesting because Tarantino was riffing on the exploitation film, right?
Definitely.
But
he's been doing that for about 25 years.
I know, but I think that he was doing it so directly with that, and those are the films that King really hated. But I wonder what he thought of Grindhouse, like, because I think that Tarantino sort of elevated it in his own way. Well, Rodriguez too, because he did Planet Terror. But it's like that's the thing is I feel like King talks about TV a lot. On Twitter and stuff like that. Like, he's a Walking Dead fan, and what was that show, The 400 or whatever, that he really liked?
The 100?
The 100, yeah. I think there was another show called The 400.
The 3-digit number?
400 was season 4.
But I think that I feel like I don't see him talk about film a lot. Or maybe I'm just not looking in the right places. But, on Twitter especially, I guess that's mainly where I follow him. I'm sure he talks about books a lot. He's always recommending books. But I guess I just wonder, like, of the films on this list, like, which ones would he really be responding to?
I'd be interested in his thoughts on found footage, which just didn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, that's like Paranormal Activity. Well, I mean, obviously I consider myself an aficionado on found footage. I've written several articles about it because I'm sort of obsessed in a weird way with it. It's very flawed, but when it's good, to me, it's kind of the best thing ever. So it's like, but I mean, like the original found footage movie, Cannibal Holocaust, is a movie that I think came out the year he wrote Danse Macabre, but I think that he probably would have hated it.
Well, that's exploitation.
Pure exploitation.
That's pure exploitation.
I mean, they're killing animals in that.
Well, there is a movie on this list, actually, I think that I don't think I've ever read anything by King stating one way or the other if you liked it or not, but Near Dark, I feel like that would be right up his alley.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of rock and roll vampire. Come on.
Rock and roll vampire.
In the version that Justin and I have, in the new preface or whatever, he does talk about like the new Dawn of the Dead. There's some scenes in that I think he goes into.
He loves He loves the 2000 the Zack
Snyder.
The Ving
film.
Rhames.
Yeah.
That's so bizarre.
I stand
weird.
by and just.
Oh, and he also likes Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Yes, he does. He gives it a nice little compliment in there.
Ooh.
I think
it's fascinating. It's just.
I think we know at this point that our tastes don't align in terms of film.
We are thinking about Rob Zombie like Stephen King thought of Wes Craven right now.
Yeah,
we don't know
that's right.
what's going to happen.
Yeah,
That's right.
he might be winning Oscars
Sure we
in a
know
couple
it.
years.
No.
Imagine like wearing just like the sunglasses and the hat, like a tuxedo.
If the next movie starts with like an old film, like 31, I'll jump out the window.
32 coming out soon.
Well, why don't we all go around and maybe pick one film from this list
Oh, wow.
that you'd say, really represents sort of your taste in horror?
Oh, my personal taste in horror.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
boy.
so not to put too much of a, or at least maybe just where you're at right now. I think our tastes are always changing, or maybe not even personal taste, just a film that had a big impact on you that's on this list.
Well, I can answer maybe all of those because for me right now, I'm more interested in the more tempered horror. Mm-hmm. For instance, I just loved It Follows.
Yeah.
I know there's some detractors, but I think that's just incredible horror film. And then we mentioned Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 were huge touchstones in my horror viewing experiences back in the, I guess, mid-90s when I discovered those, thanks to the USA Network. Which is incredible because I watched those on USA and they were so edited, but they were still scary to me, which is a testament to Sam Raimi, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's. I mean, well, Evil Dead's definitely my favorite horror film, but I'm really into, like, again, I'm still really into Cronenberg stuff, or like even like Possession.
Oh, Possession.
That's on here, definitely.
Yeah.
That's a tough watch.
Just like disturbing and just like can't wrap my head around it. Kind of horror is what I'm really into right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, everything, like, I can't speak about it enough, but this isn't on the list, so I'm going to give one that is on the list, but Twin Peaks, for me, the horror that I find within that, and I mean sort of Twin Peaks The Return and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, those two kind of examples, that to me is the kind of horror that really works for me, the kind that offers no easy answers, that really lingers on dread but isn't afraid to show you a monster. Stuff that really is sort of rifled with kind of contradictions that don't frustrate but like only serve to intrigue. And I think that's why I love Lynch, and Lynch will forever to me be, you know, the man who's making the scariest movies today. I mean, even rewatching Lost Highway recently, that movie is completely and utterly terrifying to me. It really gets under my skin. Mulholland Drive is so scary.
Seeing that again on the big screen was a experience.
Like, even just little scenes, like the scene with the fucking like cowboy, like just the way that the guy talks to Justin Theroux's character. It's not a scary scene, but it's so unnerving to me. But I'd say in terms of a recent horror movie from this year, actually, that had a really big impact on me, mainly because it showed me how horror can be such an effective vehicle for getting across like a social message without laying it over the horror, but rather integrating it directly into the horror, and that's Get Out, Jordan Peele's movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I loved Get Out, and I felt like in terms of making a movie that was really commenting on, current social issues, Black Lives Matter, police brutality, the fetishization of, minorities by, white people and things like that, the way that was also beautifully and like seamlessly interwoven into the horror, to me was such a great example. Like, you can take a message from that movie or you can not, because the movie works whether or not you're taking that message. And I think that is it's a movie that loves horror but also has a strong message behind it, and in that way I was so impressed with it.
And that's a good example of horror as art, like with a theme, with the underlying
political, social.
Yeah, exactly.
But that doesn't rely on it, which is what I love about it.
Right.
It doesn't forget it's a horror movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
I think other films sometimes do. But
yes.
Oh, I don't know. I don't have anything original here. I would have said The Fly again.
Yeah.
I love horror movies with tiny, intimate cast. There's like 3 people in that movie.
Yeah.
And I think a director that can work with that and a writer that can work with that is something special.
Yeah.
I would have said It Follows if Justin hadn't gone before me. I think, again, that's horror moving in a direction that I love. If we want to go a little more extreme, I'm a Martyrs fan. It's a polarizing film.
Yeah?
The whole French extremism movement is something that I need to explore a little more.
I haven't seen it yet. I want to.
Mel and I will have a face-off when it comes to Martyrs, I think.
Oh.
I'm intrigued. I've actually never seen it, and I very much like to. I'm kind of a little scared of it because when stuff.
You should be.
Yeah, and I kind of
It's tough to look. It's tough to look. I will say that it's tough to watch.
Do you just think it's trying to be deeper than it is?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I do appreciate your. I think it's trying not to be torture porn, but in the end, I feel it succumbs to it. But I won't go into too many spoilers because there's some good twists in it. There's some really good twists in it.
What a twist!
It's not like Ouija Origin of Evil or anything. I had to call it back.
By the way, that's the one that is my favorite movie of the last 30 years.
Speaking of twists, is From Dusk Till Dawn on here?
It is.
Oh.
It is on there.
That's a fun one.
I rewatched that actually like a year ago for a piece, and I was stunned by how much I still love it and how it's better than it was when I first saw it. I think that movie is so subversive and so exciting and so funny, and I think it balances tones so well. That's what a lot of people say it doesn't do well, but I disagree. I think that it balances the horror, the brutality, and the comedy, and sort of of the perversion and the drama, even, you know, all those things. I think it's handled in a way that is endlessly surprising.
I always forget that Harvey Keitel is the dad.
Yeah. And he's so good.
Yeah, and it's one of those. It was my favorite movie to show to people because, and you'd be like, "Don't look at the cover, don't read anything. You have to go in it blind."
Yeah,
and you're just sitting there like, "What are they going to think when Selma Hayek turns into a snake person?"
Well, that's the thing. I wish that in those trailers they had really just amped up. This is written by Tarantino and not shown any of the horror. God, that would have been incredible to watch.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it was a huge box office success anyway. So who's to say that anybody would have gone to see it?
I would say in the vein of It Follows, like The Eyes of My Mother.
Oh yeah, that's not on here, but yeah,
that was a tough watch for me.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that one.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's.
I love that movie, but it's.
I wish I'd seen it in the theater and not at my house. It was to me, it's a theater movie.
Are we Babadook fans in here?
Yeah.
I'm right down the middle with the Babadook. I think that's actually an example of a movie for me that kind of loses it forgets it's a horror movie.
Yeah,
after a while. I think the message kind of starts to overwhelm the horror.
Yeah, that was always my complaint, was that the theme and the message begins to.
But there are some absolutely horrifying moments in that movie.
I wrote that down when I was taking notes because of King's whole, horror movie as a cathartic thing, like feeding the beast so that you can, and it kind of ends like that with them like literally feeding the thing in order to like keep it at bay in the basement, and so in that sense, I see where King's coming from. But I'm
like
right down the
Babadook.
middle on that.
Yeah, I like Babadook. I just think that it maybe gets, I don't know, it pushes its metaphor a little too far in the end. The metaphor overwhelms it because, that movie to me is best when it's just chugging on the whole engine. I'm fucking up this phrase.
Chugging on the whole
engine. When it's just a balls to the wall horror movie. Chugging to the end. Wait, what is it? Chugging on the engine?
Spills?
You want to talk post-horror? I think a lot of people were very bored by The Witch.
I love The Witch.
Which I loved.
Yeah. See, I loved The Witch.
I didn't really.
I liked it a lot.
I liked a lot of it. And I just didn't like the end.
I thought that was.
And I'm not talking about. Well, there's like a couple endings, but I mean the very end. I just didn't dig it.
I'd say that my thought on it is I've rarely seen a movie that felt as satanic as that movie, and that's what I loved about it. Was that I loved, especially being somebody who has a religious background. I kind of really loved the sense that in that world, the devil was real and God was real.
When was the last time? I mean, spoiler alert. When was the last time you saw a movie where Satan literally spoke?
Yep. Yeah. And I loved that.
And it worked.
Yeah.
It got so under my skin.
That was creepy.
I mean, that to me is like I think that one of the things that I was getting frustrated by in horror, and I think this was my problem with the Babadook, but I do want to emphasize that I love the Babadook. I think it's a beautifully well-made movie and great acting, but it's, to me, I want the monster to be real a lot of, unless more often than not, I want the monster to be real. And I think I got annoyed at Babadook, and I got a little annoyed at It Follows, even though I love It Follows, that the idea that, maybe this is just in people's heads. I mean, I know that in It Follows, it's not in the world of it, but people kept looking at the metaphor more than the actual horror when they were talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think with The Witch, what I loved was that, no, this isn't ambiguous. Satan is real. And that to me was exciting. And that's, I talk about a dangerous horror movie, and I think that, people who are religious might look at The Witch and be like, dude, it's, you're playing with fire here, because you're going this far. I mean, it's kind of like, I love the show Ghost Adventures, the ghost hunting show. It's the only ghost hunting show I like. But one of the things I love is that, because their whole thing was like provoking the ghosts, like provocation. And I remember at one time they're talking to this bishop, like in the first season, he goes, you guys got to be careful. You're playing with demons here. And then and they're just like, that's what we want.
Have you watched the new Rob Lowe show?
Oh, I have not seen
right.
it.
Well,
is he playing with danger? Bigfoot, right?
No, it's kids, and they're investigating all sorts of supernatural stuff.
What a bizarre career that man has had.
Because, you know what? We'll save that for our next episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
All right, so quick. I just want to give a shout out to books. They're still being made.
Yes.
There are horror authors alive today, churning out some scary stuff.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys read a lot of it.
I do. Who do you like?
I mean, going to go down the list. I love Brian Evanson. I love Paul Tremblay, Stephen Graham Jones. If we want to go women, a lot of them are working in shorter mediums, which I love.
Yeah.
Short story writers, Livia Llewellyn, Christina Meester, Alyssa Wong. They're great.
I might make you send me this list.
Sure.
The only one I've read that.
I'm looking at the list right now, and I have not read Oh, Jeff Vandermeer, he did Born and Annihilation, right?
He's more
So I recognize
of the new weird school.
the post-horror, as it were.
Yeah.
I've read Annihilation, but I've not. I have the other ones, but I haven't read them yet.
The movie comes out next
and
year.
Paul Tremblay's great, although I kind of struggle with Devil.
Yeah, I prefer Head Full of Ghosts.
Head Full of Ghosts is great. Do you know Nick Cutter at all? I talk about him on the show a lot because I love him.
I've only read, unfortunately, Little Heaven, which is apparently the worst.
Yeah, it's not very good.
But okay, well there you go.
Read The Troop. The Troop is really good.
You know what? Just keep reading, everybody.
Yeah, just reading's great. I'm reading. It's not really horror, but it's kind of at a a pre-apocalyptic because they're all waiting for this meteor to strike Earth, and it's called The Last Policeman, and it's a trilogy. I can't remember the name of the author, of course, but it's a neat little trilogy of books that's kind of about like a detective. Kind of solving crimes when the apocalypse is nigh and it's on the way, and it's kind of interwoven into a larger story of how people are, sort of the factions that are developing and the way the world is changing. So it's neat. But speaking of books, our next episode in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about.
Oh no, because in 2 weeks we should tell people here if they don't know, we will have seen it.
Oh right,
we're going to be able to see it before it comes out. So
that'll be that episode.
But the next book, which will be probably a month from now, will be rough. It's going to get rough.
It's the Cujo. It's the Cujo.
It's the Cujo.
That Cujo. I will not be on that episode because I can't handle animals being hurt in any way, shape, or form. So
disclaimer.
That's that disclaimer. But I will say that we will be back next week with a Needful Tweets. But before we sign off, we've got to give this book some clown noses.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
I didn't think about it, but yeah, sure.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
I think we should ask our readers to comment, like, why do they read horror? I just want to know.
Yeah. I know.
Why do you guys like it?
When we post the episode, let's ask that question because I think that's neat stuff. I think that's kind of the question whenever you meet somebody who likes horror. Asking those questions, like, why do you like being scared? I mean, my whole thing too is I want to, if people have actual ghost stories like that of their own that they've lived through, I like beg them to tell me because I love those kinds of things.
I think after we post this, we'll do a different post to kind of start up a thread asking those questions.
Yeah.
What do you
think
like?
all those
Why do you
questions
like
are
this?
so fun.
What is it about horror?
And I think that's been what's fun about this episode is, just talking about King's thoughts on horror. We are able to talk about our own thoughts on horror, and that's really fun. So I'd say for that reason alone, and just because there aren't a lot of books like this where, the master of a genre gets to write about that genre and what they find so special about it, especially, when we're talking about something like horror, like, there's a million people out there pontificating on the power of, various kinds of drama or comedy, but we don't get that with horror a lot. So I'm going to give this 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses. Mac?
Yeah, I'm going to give it 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses. I always have to slow down. No, I agree. For everything Randall just said, it was just, again, like I really feel like this, it kind of, sparked this want and need in me to kind of explore horror in other formats, especially radio, which we didn't talk about too much here, but, and just, I'm just really excited and was really happy to read this.
Cool. Mel?
Yeah, I'm going to do a quadruple nose.
Yeah.
4
noser.
bright red Pennywise clown noses. I think it's sort of impossible to be a lover of horror and not get into this at least a little bit.
Yeah.
I think, again, I love the conversational tone of it. I love exploring the recommendations for myself. I love that it's not preachy or patronizing. Mm-hmm. And I do think, the 10 novels at the back, it gets a little bogged down in itself, but that's fine.
That's the negative one.
The negative one nose.
That's why it's not a 5 noser. And again, you're right. There's not that many books out there like this, and so it's a breath of fresh air in that regard. And to look at it 20-something years later is also rewarding. So very much enjoyed my reread.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of upset I put it off for as long as I did, which is literally decades. I would also give it 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses. It's a very good read, and the thing that's great about it, I mean, if you're hesitant, if you're putting off reading this because it's, I guess it's an academic book. It's not really though. It's informative, but such a casual, light read, and I don't mean that again to be negative. It's a very easy read. Like you blow through this thing. I mean, it's a long book,
400
page
plus,
wise, 400 pages with smaller font, but. the amount of effort that King puts into this is there, but more importantly, the amount of love he has for
the
horror is
passion
there.
for it.
And I really, really enjoyed it. And like Mel said, you just don't really find this type of book anymore. Really for any genre at all.
Yeah.
Written by people who are actually in the game.
Yeah.
In the game.
In the game.
Yeah,
the game.
he's getting opinions
He's in the
from
game
other
and-
authors.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is also fascinating, the people he was able to pull for this, too. And he was only, it's depressing, he was like 32 when he wrote this.
Yeah,
too,
it's
which is-
wild.
Get on it, guys.
And I just really appreciated, I know, I'm Danse Macabre, too, more dancing.
And we're not going to get another book like this until on writing, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So,
And
that'll
that's going to be a different type of format.
Very
too.
different
Yeah.
type. So that's our thoughts on Danse Macabre. A really interesting, kind of neat diversion from where we're usually going. So next week, we're back with Needful Tweets. In 2 weeks, we'll be talking to you about It. And then in 4 weeks, we'll be talking about Cujo. So that leaves you plenty of time to read Cujo, because it's not that long, is it? That Cujo. Rough.
Pretty short.
3 hundo?
I'm going to start leaving you voicemails with passages from Cujo.
No!
Just to upset you.
There better be lots of barking on that episode. So thanks, guys, for listening so much. We really appreciate it. If you get a chance, please pop over to iTunes, leave us a review. That stuff really helps us. Post on our Facebook. Rate us on Facebook if you want. That's also an option, and we appreciate it. Just engage with us. Send us messages. We try to respond all the time. If we don't, it's because we're all busy watching movies.
And reading
Stephen King. So thanks, guys, so much. And, until next time, long days,
and pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends.